Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Rags and Jackz evening, even though Jackz isn't here again. He's probably fallen asleep after a big fat dinner. My special guest tonight, I've been following for maybe 3 years now, maybe just under that, Bonnie Lad. You watch his shows on Saturday night along with Sense of Communion and stuff. They do brilliant work. I have some of his videos lined up so we can discuss them. He does some really, really brilliant things. Without further ado, Bonnie Lad.
Yeah, thanks for having us on your show, Ragnar. It's a great pleasure, and thanks for the intro as well. And again, thanks for the video, what you introduced. It's a video I made, I think it was this year, for the streams, what we did on a Saturday night. We've always been here. And obviously music, I'll give my good friend Sentiment and Communion a shout out, the music, and it was a combination of my artistic skills and Communion's artistic skills. So, and again, look, thanks for inviting you on your stream. It's a great pleasure to be here. And again, thanks for everyone in the chat as well for being here.
My pleasure. I've been willing to have you on for a while, but then again, you're a hard-working man, and you have to pay the bills. So usually on a Sunday night, you're in your bed, getting ready for the next day. Understandable, see who we have in the chat there with the English Bulldogs and hashtag Streaky Bacon, Raymond Piper, the man himself, Sensen. I might invite Sensen and he can co-host with me. he knows you better than me. Black Pigeon, Pills, and so welcome, folks. We're going to start off, Bonnie, with just playing some of your stuff, and then you can explain, how you came to the point of doing this. We have your woman from the palace, what you're talking about, Willis. We have the one about what was it, El Salvador, seeking asylum in Britain. It's ridiculous. It's like, but then again, there's an American reporter there. He's reporting that there's Ukrainians at the Mexican border. Now how are Ukrainians getting to Mexico to get to the Mexican border to get into America? These things just blow my mind. There's Morgan Skywalker out. And your thoughts, Bonnie?
In the respect of the El Salvadorians, the asylum seekers.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a global thing, isn't it, now, the UK? It's attracting people, not just like the traditional routes, what we've seen in the news in the last couple of years, via the channel, via like countries like Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, African countries, and you can name all the countries, but predominantly Sudan, Somalia, Abyssinia, Ethiopia, etc. Just the list goes on and on. But now we're seeing people coming from like Thailand, China, Turkestan, same people, all different nationalities, Philippines. It's remarkable. And obviously, the sort of surprising element you're seeing, which has been happening not just this year, but it's been happening in the last several years, is obviously people coming from Central America, obviously some cases South America, but Central America does seem to be quite a popular place where some of these people come from now. Like I said, El Salvadorians. I looked into a little bit of this, and I think what I've read in 2021, there was 741 El Salvadorians seeked asylum in the UK, which is remarkable to think. Why El Salvador? That's when I made that little video on that live stream, because I wouldn't have known that, to be honest. And I think that's good work. English Bulldog, Active Patriot out there, and James Goddard, who were exposing some of the what was going on in some of these asylum centres, these hotels, and the sort of people who are allowing in. So I knew they were coming over, but I didn't realise the scale they were coming over, and especially Sorry. Especially in the respect of they were like gangbangers. They were coming over. They were like, you could tell they were gang affiliated. I'm not saying they were all with makeup. Could have been with tattoos and stuff like that. But they were, they were mainly from Guatemala, El Salvador, some of those types. But they were actually citing one of the reasons they were actually leaving El Salvador and seeking asylum in the UK was because of gang issues, gang reasons, and stuff like that, and violence. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's happening in a lot of different countries. You know, it's happening in North America, it's happening obviously in South America, Central America, it's happening in Africa, it's happening in Asia, it's happening all over the world. This sort of gang mentality. So, you know, I mean, like when everybody literally, that's what it's like to me. You just have to get a flight. If you can get a flight and a visa into this country, and you can claim asylum, it's as simple as that. It's just not. There's nothing stopping these people coming here. They're not getting turned back once they're here for whatever means and for whatever reasons. They claim asylum. They're just not being turned back. And like I said, I think it's quite shocking when you're seeing people who are, in my opinion, my humble, honest opinion, they're just taking the piss. And that's it. You know, why would you come from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, the three countries, what popular places where I come from? Why would you come to the UK? Do you know what I mean? Is it economic reasons? Are you really genuinely fleeing for your life? And the big problem I have, again, is there's no real, we haven't got a connection with those countries. You'd have thought they'd gone to Spain, for example, or the countries what are surrounding them. And, you know, that's what sort of shocks me, to be honest here. But when you look into it and, you know, like yourself, you can spend an hour, 2 hours looking on the internet and doing your own research, and you get some gems, if you want to say, use that expression. And it sort of shocks you and it bloody annoys you as well, because you don't realise the scale of it happening. Because a lot of, like I've always said, a lot of the issues at hand are local issues. They don't necessarily get reported in the national newspapers like the Daily Mail, etc. So they stay local. So these are happenings all over, especially in England and Scotland, and obviously you're seeing it yourself in Northern Ireland and Wales. It's not just exclusive to England now, because we're ferrying them out of England, so to speak. Scotland can't get enough of them at the moment. They just celebrate the fact that they're getting more asylum seekers and refugees per capita per person than England, because it's just another swipe. They have a dig back at Westminster then. So it's a very convoluted sort of subject. So I just raised the issue this week about asylum seekers from South America, just to raise that issue, because I don't think people are fully aware of the scale of what's happening in the respect of these people coming over.
Yep. According to our politicians here, there were no asylum seekers. At the time the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan, they said they would take one Afghanistan family and put them in a village or a town or a city, you know, and give them housing and stuff. And they sent one to where I live. And they stayed for about a week before they left. You know, they stuck out like a sore thumb. It's like they walked into Tesco's. I was in Tesco's one night, and it was shopping trolley, and they walked in through the front door, and it was like, you know, like a gunfight in a saloon, and everybody just stops and turns around. That's like, holy fuck, what is that? You know, a man in a white dress. But then they told us that's what was coming, no more. You know, now we're finding out that the hotel 6 miles up the road, which has been there since before I was a child, before I was born. So it's been there 60, 70 years. Is now over the winter will be accommodating asylum seekers in a massive town at the north of Ireland. The town that I was born in. And the powers that be in the town, because as you know, we have 2 police forces here, one legal and the other not, they'll not stick to that. That's going to end up in tears. It's no, you're not staying here. But they done the same in Belfast, I think it was. And what they do then, Bonnie, is they just ship them in coaches down south. And then it becomes the Irish people's problem. And look at the problems they're having. You know? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, like you said, I've seen a lot more stories coming out of Northern Ireland in the last 2 years, for example, of asylum seekers, refugees. And the problem is it gets too convoluted, that wording, because mainstream media tries to hide the fact that they are asylum seekers, illegals, by saying the refugees. And you dig away at the story and you realise that people are not refugees, it's asylum seekers, because they give it away straight away, because they say, well, it'll say the title, for example, refugees, and they'll say, well, they only live on £5 odd a day. Well, you know straight away it's asylum seekers. But I have seen a lot more issues in Northern Ireland, and it's mainly like in your cities. It's not like necessarily in rural areas, But there was a good article, I think it was, I can quote from the Telegraph this week, and it wasn't just the Telegraph, obviously, it'd been other newspapers as well. And what the government are on about doing is rolling out a programme to actually encourage asylum seekers, when they're given asylum, to live in sort of muted they muted that about in Scotland. I think it was 2 weeks ago as an MP, it could have been an SNP. I don't know the guy's name. I think it's in the Dundee Courier. He was saying that they should get more Africans, for example, in the northern regions of Scotland, the Highlands, etc. And what she says, you're going to see Northern Ireland as well, because the depopulation, the immigration, the indigenous population is just not keeping up. That's what we're told, and there's no encouragement with that, as you know yourself. You're not encouraged to have big families, to support your families. It's frowned upon. It's just bizarre again. But when these people come here, when they're having the families, 3, 4, 5, 6 children in some cases, like I've pointed out a lot of stories about Afghanistan families, and one of the reasons they can't be rehoused, one reason they're actually still in hotels after a year, is because of the size of families. It's not because there's not accommodation available. It's the size of the families. They're needing. There's a family, for example, and this is the truth as well. Anybody listening or watching can Google this. Milton Keynes Gazette or Citizen, it's called, the newspaper, highlighted a story of 11 in a family. Now, where are they going to move to? You're going to need a 6, 7, 8 bedroom house, in all truth and reality. And that's a major problem, what's happening with a lot of these people coming over, especially the likes of Afghanistan. And the government have rolled up to that plan where we're going to accept these people in. And again, in recent weeks, there's been a bit of a clamour about why we're not helping Afghanistan's enough to get housing, because there's X amount of thousands still in housing. And that's, like you said, it's going to have an effect with you guys. And I know people say, well, it's not going to affect me, it's not going to happen. But I think it's got to eventually happen, because of nowhere else to put these people in likes of accommodation. There will be sort of ferrying them out to sort of maybe semi-obscure places. There will be people like we've seen in the Republic and in different parts of England as well, but not on the scale as we saw in Republic. And fair play to them for doing that. It will come out and protest about what's going on, because, like you said, you can't just have 200-300 young men going into your particular area and expect everything to work out hunky dory. It just isn't going to work. There's no reality in it. It's just asking for trouble. But it just seems to happen, and the government are just, like you said, they're just riding roughshod on what anybody says, and just don't give a damn.
You see, when we talked about this years ago, we were all told we were all crackers and we were all nuts and we were all conspiracy theorists and stuff. And we all know what the difference between a conspiracy is and actual fact. About 3 months. Now, somebody pointed out in the chat there, I had it highlighted, but it was, it's the Clergy plan in full force. It's in full flight. There's Nigel Farage, the saviour of Britain, got us out of the EU. Are we actually out of the EU? Are we really? We're still bound by their laws. We're still bound by court judgments. There's a plane of 350 illegals, people that have murdered people that have raped people, being sent back to Jamaica. Next minute, the lawyers come in, and next minute, there's one guy on the flight. That's it, because his lawyer wasn't good enough, probably. But there, Steve points out, Ireland is starting to fight back. I'm getting videos daily of the Irish just saying, fucking no, enough's enough. The Irish are genuine, friendly, charitable people. Well, it's better as long as you're not British, but Brits out, Africans in, and they are starting to fight back. And there's videos galore of them. That one that you played last night with the ambulance driver. Now, apparently that was a Northern Irish ambulance driver who works in England. That's what I was told. Wasn't. Apparently he's working in Northern Ireland. And we still have to, there's a man dead because of 2 people that can't speak English. Why would you come to a country and you're not able to speak the language? If white people, if us, English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish and all, and even the Irish decide, let's go to Spain for a couple of weeks for a holiday. 9 times out of 10, they'll have a wee reference book and they'll have a phrase book and they'll be going, and they'll learn parts of the language. just to get by. These people don't. They just come and they go. You know, that there is what boils my piss. Charles, yeah. We are Charles. Yeah. But the shops are empty now. You know, there's the 14-year-old girl, Bonnie, that slept on the streets of Dublin. While the protesters are trying to stop the ferries bringing them across in coat clothes, the wee girl froze to death. Not even mentioned in the mainstream news, you know. I'm going to play one of yours here just to get us kicked off here. That is not yours. That's one I want to go over. This one. So that's that. How do I do this? And then you can tell us how you do these things and how you come to them. Share the screen. I'm getting better at this thing here.
When you line with asylum seekers or asylum seeker, for example, you often straight away think of the Channel crossings, and you think about people from such countries as Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Sudan, just to name a few. But what we've seen a trend of, especially in 2022, 2021, is people coming from Central America, especially El Salvador. There's been cases, obviously, people coming from Honduras and Guatemala as well. And it's quite strange to see this because you actually think, well, why are these people crossing the Atlantic and wanting to come to the UK? You think straight away if they were to come to Europe, they'd want to go to Spain, obviously because they speak Spanish. You know, they don't speak English; it's not the first language, and with no correlation with the nation. It's not like a former colony. There's nothing there between us as nations, as people, etc. So you do ask, why did they come here? Well, some of the reasons they actually give is gang violence. As we know, some of these Central American countries are notorious. El Salvador is, for example, for its gang violence, its death rate, etc. Then we've got much the same with Honduras and Guatemala. They do cite there's gang violence, and that's one of the reasons a lot of the younger people come over, but also families come over, citing that as a reason. When I say come over, they'll fly over, they're flying to Manchester, they could fly to Gatwick, Heathrow, then they will claim asylum. And in some cases, they do actually fly in from mainland Europe, and again, in some cases, from Spain. So again, another reason why they come here as well is sexual preference. For example, if they're gay or if they're transgender, they'll cite that as a reason because obviously these countries where they come from, in some respects, used to be very traditional, conservative, the Catholic faith. So they're not really on board with what's going on, especially in the sort of what's going on with transgender and non-binary sort of people, etc. So that's another reason or excuse they use for when they're coming over to this country to claim asylum. There was a famous case last year in 2021 where the UK had the first non-binary refugee, believe it or not. And again, that was from El Salvador. We've seen a poet come over. He's cited political reasons why he's claimed asylum. We've seen doctors come over. Allegedly, they say the doctors, and they've come over. They've claimed asylum for various reasons, and they're citing the government, respective governments for the respective countries they come from, saying that their life's under threat because they've been outspoken about what's going on. There's numerous reasons. I've seen imagery of women, just single women or families coming over. I don't know particularly why the reason they've come over. They're not actually cited, or they've never actually spoken in public to say why they've come over. So your guess is as good as mine. They could be saying again domestic violence. I could mention that because I've actually seen that mentioned on several occasions. I've read that, or I've actually heard them verbally say that. Some of these women have come from various countries, uh, and claim domestic violence, which seems a bit bizarre to me because domestic violence is a worldwide thing. It's not just exclusive to say El Salvador or other countries where some asylum seekers come from, women who claim asylum because of domestic violence. So yeah, it's a litany of reasons why they come over, and like I said, in most cases, the people, the asylum seekers, or I will call them economic migrants because that's what I think most of them are, the majority are. They will eventually be given right to stay, and I think the way things are at the moment, the fast tracking things, the government, because there's that many in the system at the moment. So there will be more pushback against what's going on, and eventually these people will be allowed to settle here. They'll have, like I said, claim asylum, and after so many years, 5 years, they'll get a British passport. But in between that time, they will also have an opportunity, and it'll be tax paid free. They will have an opportunity to bring the families over from the respective countries where they actually came from through the family reunification, irregular migration, etc. So they're only going to bring more people over with them as well. So it's not just them coming over; it's more people as well.
Right, Bonnie. Where do you get all that information from? Are you research? I know you're working, but are you researching during the week? You still there, Bonnie? Hello?
Yes, we're talking on YouTube then. Sorry about that. It's a bit weird when you're on somebody else's channel because you think because I did the stream last night for like over 4 hours and you think how much it's on my channel, but sorry about that. No, it's a lot of the stuff it's posted over years. I've got quite a good memory for stuff what I've actually posted, and I try to sort of keep it the best I can. It's a complete shambles, just how I've organised it. But I do actually remember a lot of the stuff, to be honest, a lot of the particular headlines. And yeah, and you do spend quite a lot of time doing sort of research, and it's not out of anybody's remit. Anybody can do it, and if you've got that little bit of it's patience more than anything else. You could spend an hour looking for a particular article or story and going through like local news, using Google, using the internet, and you can find stuff, and it might go back several years. And a thing I like sometimes do as well, and I think it's a good thing to do, is to go back so many years. I did a good article a couple of months ago. I was highlighting the outrage. It was about 5-6 years ago about asylum seekers coming to the UK, and they're in London. They're all staying in this really fancy hotel. And there was a big meltdown about it. The Daily Mail had a big melt. This is what's happening, and these people are staying in a hotel, etc. And the comment I made is even that people don't even bet an eyelid now. Do you know what I mean? Doesn't even get the headlines anymore. That type of news. So stuff like that I remember. I've got quite a good memory because obviously I've been quite active when it comes to the social media side, posting stuff and highlighting what's going on. So yeah, I'd say
you mentioned last night.
Yeah.
You mentioned last night when you were with Simpson that you didn't know very much about the WEF and Klaus Schwab and the globalization of the word. So were you just sticking to local English, British stories, or do you go further afield sometimes?
Well, no, I've always found this is just my remit. It's how I do things. There's a lot of people who cover a lot of different issues. I just think it's you try to have the tentacles all over the world, which is not wrong with that. It's each to one's own. But I just find it's more relatable to talk about local issues, whether it's in Derbyshire, Middlesbrough, it could be in Scotland, it could be Northern Ireland, it could be in Wales, it could be in my neck of the woods, for example, rather than going to the sort of global sort of things. Because I think for me, learning what's happening at a local level, then you can expand higher. Then do you understand what I mean? You can go to national, then you can go to like say what's happening in Europe, for example. But I think if you jump too quickly, you're missing sort of the groundwork, if that makes sense. So I still like to continue reiterating issues about what's happening in this country, because in some respects, what's happening abroad, it's very similar to what's happening. We are being mirrored, or we're being mirrored, if you understand what I mean, by the same problems in Western Europe, Americas, the Anglosphere, so to say. So it's not like groundbreaking sort of stuff, but I think the local issues for me, and I've always championed it, mate. I've always have done since I've been on social media from years ago, and I think it's relevant, because I think this is the thing about social media. It's a great tool. It brings people together, but it's great to know what's happening in other parts of the UK, for example. Say when you can tell a story, I can tell a story, but sometimes people don't watch live streams, for example. So getting that information out and articulate it in such a way which is manageable, I think that's the golden rule. I think on social media is learning how to post stuff. It really is, and I don't sound condescending or out. And one thing I learned this a long time ago, I read into this, and like most people now with smartphones, they don't want a lot of information. Most people with a smartphone just want a headline. They'll see an headline, and you give them condense as much information within like 100 letters, for example, and they're happy with that. When you start throwing loads of information at people, they don't want to know. It just puts them off. So if you can get that to a fine art, and some people are really good at it on social media, and that's why people like. And when you sort of talking too much, or not saying, no, sorry, not talking too much, when you give them too much information, it just puts people off sometimes. I think some people, again, it's just how we are. We can't get enough information sometimes. We're wanting more news all the time. If it's quite weird that on social media, years ago, you had a newspaper, you watched the news, that's only in news you got. Now it's just insatiable. So once you've posted something, you're talking about a particular subject, an hour later, something else comes up. An hour later, something else comes up. It just doesn't stop. It's like you said, it's 24 hours, but it seems like it might be silly one, but it's like 36 hours in 24-hour news, if you know what I mean. It's just non-stop. And obviously you get stuff from the Atlantic, from the Atlantic, where you got the America, then you got stuff from Australia and stuff like that. So it's just 24/7, and it's hard to cover everything. So I don't bother. I just try to cover what I do, and I try to put my own narrative or my own spin on more stuff. So I would consider myself an original, if that's the right expression, original content maker. I do my own stuff, like memes and observations. I've always sort of done my own stuff, to be honest with you.
I'm still learning all that stuff. You've been helpful. Sensim's been pretty great. I'm still getting to grips with it. But I sat here for there's this afternoon before we started.
Sorry about that. I meant to say the Atlantic, not the Antarctic. I think it's the Atlantic. Sorry about that.
I had sat here for maybe 2 hours setting this all up, opening windows. Right, I'm going to like that. 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 All these different things, topics, and stuff out there, just so I can get it right in my head. Then I have a wee pad here with notes, and Jack was going to. So he says, "I'm getting a pad. I've got a new pad with a couple of pens, and I'm going to write this down. I'm going to ask them this. I'm going to ask them that." And then by the time you start getting talking, that sort of goes out the side. You're still on the same conversation. There are people in the chat buying the coffees. Buy me alcohol. Buy me alcohol. No, I'm sitting here with a heater behind me because I won't put on the actual. I won't actually put on the main heating in the house because I can't afford to. I'm going to play. Which one did I have lined up? This is a quick one of yours. This one made me laugh. Because you do hit on serious notes, Bonnie, but you do put a bit of comedy into it too. Which I find really good. Share screen.
What you talking about, Lewis?
that wee skit had me in fits for hours because I remember that wee boy years ago on the telly. What did he not have some ailment or something that he died really young?
Yeah, I think he fell down the steps in his home. Ricky broke his neck. I think that's how he died. I think it was an accident how he died.
Somebody told me he had some sort of.
I think he did have definitely had a growth problem, obviously because of the size when he got older. But I'm pretty certain that's how he died. I think he fell down some stairs or something like that. I don't think it was all to do with his illness. I could be wrong with that, but I'm pretty certain I'm right in what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you seen Lee Anderson?
Who? Sorry.
Lee Anderson is an MP.
No.
And he was asking the ambassador from Albania. They were grilling him at a government thing in Parliament. I'll play this and I'll get your comments.
Social media. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Your Excellency. I've got a few questions for you. You did describe Albania as being a country with a warm heart, a very safe country, a welcoming country, a country where people from the UK like to take their holidays. So I'll take your word for it. And you also suggested that the vast majority that's coming over are economic migrants trying to set up businesses, not genuine asylum seekers or people escaping slavery. Now, I've looked on the internet at flights coming from Albania. You can fly from Albania for £28 to this country directly. So I think it's about 3 hours 20 minutes or something like that. The journey on the bus and then on a dinghy is a perilous 40, 50, 60-hour journey costing thousands and thousands of pounds, which people pay to people traffickers. Could you explain to me, why do you think people are paying up to £5,000 just get here illegally rather than pay 28 quid on a Wizz Air flight from Albania?
Can you repeat the last question?
Could you explain to me why people are prepared to pay thousands of pounds to people smugglers, to traffickers, whatever you want to call them, rather than pay £28 on a flight from Albania?
Is exactly what I have asked just from the beginning, because they don't have the possibility to apply for legal migration. That's the problem. And to apply for visa. Because
No, let me come back to you. Why can't they just visit the country for 28 quid and then claim asylum?
Why?
Yeah. Why can't they visit the country for £28, travel on a plane for £28, come, i.e. on a holiday, and then claim asylum? Why can't they do that?
I don't have this information.
So you do have this information. Why can't they do that?
Well, I can't suppose why they do that.
Is it perhaps, do you think, because if they come legally and produce a passport and documents, that our authorities, our border control, know exactly who these people are, where they're from, and any activities, illegal activities they may be involved in the past? Do you think that may be the reason?
Well, I don't have any answer for
Why not? Why don't you have an answer for that?
Because I don't know people that are coming legally apply for asylum.
I'll put it to you then, Ambassador. I think, is my theory, that people coming and paying thousands of pounds to get here illegally, making a perilous journey, that probably quite a high proportion of those are going to be involved in some sort of criminal activity when they get here. Would you think that's correct?
Well, the answer is that no one came here to be involved in criminal activity, because in general they know what happened if you are involved in criminal activity.
Okay, so
normally they are coming for legal. Normally they are just economic.
Do you not
migrant.
agree that they are already criminals by coming here illegally, by entering this country illegally, and then making bogus asylum claims? We don't know very much, do you, Ambassador? I'll give you another question. Is it fair for the British taxpayer to spend millions and millions of pounds putting up Albanians who've come from a safe country in hotels?
Well, I don't know the legal framework that.
Okay. Do you think the Albanian government...
It's not my responsibility to answer the question.
Do you think the Albanian government should make a financial contribution to this country for housing Albanian migrants?
Give a contribution?
Yeah, financial contribution.
No.
It's costing millions. No.
Because it's not the responsibility of the Albanian government.
Really? Its own people aren't responsibility?
Yes, yes.
So people that's supposedly...
These people, until border with UK, in France, Germany, elsewhere, are coming as a normal
But
tourist.
Ambassador, this is not free movement. This is people entering our country illegally. Now, you say that your country is a warm and welcoming country with a big, massive heart. I'll take your word for that. So if you've got a big heart and you want to look after Albanian people, do you think you've got a responsibility to make a financial contribution to this country, to our government, to look after your own Albanian people when they get here?
Well, there is no reason to give a contribution.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Stuart McDonald.
Sorry, Bonnie. It's not their responsibility to make a contribution. That speaks volumes. Apparently there's 11,000 Albanians in Britain at the minute, and the footage came out there was it last week, Albanian's Independence Day, and they're in a £100,000 Mercedes Benz closing off London, doing burnouts. Now these people are supposed to be refugees. They've been trafficked, so they've been stolen from their own homeland and been brought across to ours. That doesn't make sense to me. Your thoughts? He's away again. Where's he going?
No, I'm sorry. You want me to talk? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's something I've followed in some respects from years back. This is when we started seeing a lot of turf wars going on in a lot of towns and cities, especially in England, and it was all to do with you had the Vietnamese with the cannabis. Now the Albanians have come in. They're probably the biggest drug movers in the UK, especially in cocaine and cannabis now. But it's been going on for years, this. And this is one thing I'll say about localised news. There was a story today, it could have been from Middlesbrough. I think somebody from chat from Middlesbrough there. It's absolutely off the scale how many people have been arrested in Middlesbrough or in the North East, for example, Albanians. Then you go to any part of the country. It doesn't matter where it is now. This isn't just in Middlesbrough, it's just in Bradford, it's just in Leeds, it's literally all over these cannabis places. And every time the police raid them, it's the same scenario. They're being trafficked. It's modern day slavery. In most cases, they'll get a very minimum sentence. It might be 9 months, 12 months tops, and original 18-month sentence to half it, obviously. And a lot of times it's time served and just deport them. And there's been several cases, and you can check this yourself, where the people have actually claimed asylum when they've been arrested and they can't deport them. And there are cases where they've been arrested, got to prison, claimed asylum, come back out, still claiming asylum, and they got caught again in a cannabis farm. And they just play the same stories all the time. So the violins, again, similar. I came to this country because I was smuggled in because I was told I was getting building work. And the building work didn't work out. Then I was driven up north to the north, say, for example, Middlesbrough. Then I was pushed into this house and I was told to do this. And it's just bullshit. 99% of these people, I believe, know what they're getting into. And they're getting a bigger cut what they're saying they are getting. I think it's absolute bullshit. You see all the videos we've seen on prison. You see the stuff on TikTok, Instagram and stuff like that. They're lauding it. And like you said, in the Albanian day, there were not just one car there. There were several cars. It just happened just in London. It were different parts as well. And a lot of Kosovans, what come over in the war, Yugoslavian conflict, most of them were Albanians. A lot of them Albanians, because that is Albanian Kosovan. And a lot of them come under that guise as well. I was shocked to find out how many Albanians actually live in the UK. Most of them do live in London. That's where most of them sort of inhabit. But obviously
the government figures say 11,000, and I think it's a hell of a lot more than that.
Well, it's not. If that's 11,000 asylum seekers, but there is Albanians who are legally here who've come over through conflict and have been given asylum, and that's well into tens of thousands. You'd be surprised how many's there as well. And obviously they're bring people over as well, because we saw a story where an uncle who had been given asylum so many years ago was waiting for his family on a bus. I don't know if you saw that on the news, on ITV News. He was actually waving to his family, his two nephews and his brother and his wife had come here illegally. And he's waving to him on bus saying, this is wrong. The British government shouldn't be treating people like that. Do you know what I mean? And again, we can expand on that, because every time these people have a story to tell, whether it's them or it's a relative, it's always a story of war. It's always hardship and stuff like that. It's just, they've all gone through this, that, and the other. But like they said, the Tory MP, the sad thing about it, it's just saber rattling. I haven't seen that video before. I've seen videos of similar nature to that, and it's just saber rattling, because not ever gets done about it. They know what's happening. We know what's happening. We've got people in the chat who've actually gone out and seen it with their own eyes. We've got people who report on this on a daily basis, a weekly basis. So it's not like it's hidden away. It's in the public eye. And so, but again, it's saber rattling. But the other issue at hand as well, which is it's good that you're covering the Albanian factor as well. And a lot of people think this is where it's a split opinion maybe, because some people think, well, yeah, but everybody's sort of galvanized on this illegal immigration, asylum seekers, but at the same time, we're getting at least 1 million, according to different sources, 1 million legal immigrants coming into this country, or irregular migration as well, at the same time, as well as these asylum seekers. So we're all getting worked up about that. And you don't know, because people, is that a ploy again? Because people say, well, that's what the government's doing. It's giving us like red meat. It's giving us a small fight about and shout about. While at the same time, through the back door, through all these various trade agreements, what's going at the moment. They're doing one with India at the moment. That's still not getting the go ahead. And I think before the year's out, that agreement might be done. And that'll be hidden away maybe. But I can guarantee you what the Indians want. They want more free movement for their citizens to come to this country. And that's what's happening. But the asylum seeker thing, I think it's really relevant, and I think it's important what was going on. Because I think a lot of people see it, and now it's just getting, I don't know if it's apathy, I don't know. It's one of those sort of things. I think I tried to allude about this last night's stream about, because we've got this crisis, one after another. And people at the moment are probably not looking at that news, the asylum seeker issue and stuff like that, because they're more concentrated going on what's in their own life, if that makes sense. They don't want to get involved with the asylum seeker issue. It's not their thing. They're more bothered about the cost of living crisis. That's some of my opinion, to be honest with you, because I don't know what it is with this, what's going on in this country. I think it's 43,000, 44,000 what have come over, and it's just it's astounding, because to think that 2-3 years ago people were livid about what was going on. There were a few thousand coming over, but now it's like a lot of things what are happening in society. People get acclimatized to what's going on.
Steve Laws and Patriot, what do you call it? Active Patriot, and they're down there every day, and they're counting heads, and their figures are up around, I think you were right, it was about 44,000. Last year it was only 20-something thousand. The year before it was only 6,000. The year before that was only 2,000, and the year before that was only 800. So there's a plan afoot. In my opinion, Bonnie, somebody has a plan. Now, whether it's somebody mentioned it in the chat there, the Kalergi plan, or I have one video lined up there, and your man says the white population of the world aren't, reproducing, they're not thing, so we have to move in a new workforce. They don't see us as human beings, they see us as a commodity, if that makes sense, Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, like I said, that's a bigger issue, because one of the things when I first got into into this sort of subject matter, it was actually because of Italy. There was Salvini at the time, and this was quite some years ago, and it was all to do with the crossings in the Mediterranean, the North Africans, whatever, asylum seekers coming over via in Italy by big numbers were coming over. And that's when I first saw this, and that's what sort of awakened me to the NGOs, because I really question why people were picking these people up off the Libyan coast, for example. Why it was very well organised, how they could fund to get a ship. You're not talking. It's a lot. It's expensive, so they were getting crews to man these ships. They were getting they weren't necessarily volunteers, but they were full-time workers working on these ships to bring these people over. And there's loads of these different ships now. I follow about 3 of them on Twitter, and they have several ships to bring these people over. But at the beginning, it was a couple of ships, and that's what sort of alarmed me to what was going on. And I remember reading an article. It was all about Africa, the population of Africa. It's just booming at the moment, and they have got somewhere to push out. Maybe they see Europe or even different parts of Africa as somewhere safer to be, economically a better place to be. But like most people from African descent, they do see Europe as the honeypot, and that's where most of them make it, because 9 times out of 10 in most cases, probably it's a higher statistic than 99 out of 100 people who get into Europe, they don't get deported, even some of the crimes they commit. And that awakened me. That was a long time ago, that war. Then we started seeing the scale. But the first thing you did actually see were people, which was happening for quite some years, were people smuggling themselves onto vehicles, backs of trucks. That's been going on for quite some years. And obviously, in the way the Channel Tunnel, people even walking through the Channel Tunnel, weren't they? Crossing.
Angela's mentioned it in the chat. Don't forget. But it was Active Patriot that actually asked the government for the figures on how many were actually walking through the Channel Tunnel. Now, I would say that's pretty freaking dangerous. They weren't on a lorry, they were actually walking through the Channel Tunnel.
But I know one guy got killed. I think he got electrocuted, and there was a couple of guys who made it through. Then there was the famous guy, the Sudanese guy, which if you just have to Google, I think it was like 2017, 2018. and he made it through. He was arrested. He went to prison for trespass. I think he only did 3 months. But they actually, as soon as he couldn't speak a word of English, this Sudanese guy, they actually had lawyers on hand to help him. He had a local charity on hand to help him, like a refugee asylum seeker, because they actually bought him a suit. Then, through whatever mitigation, he served his prison time. He was let out, and he was given asylum. He was given a right to remain. It was unbelievable. So he came here illegally, went through the tunnel, went to prison, then was given right to remain. Then he was given a house in Handsworth in Birmingham, I believe. And his ambition is, he's well in his 40s, this chap, was to learn English, and like they always do, they want to learn English and make a contribution to society. So and that's his thing at 46-year-old. He'd probably been a chemistry scientist or something like that. But that's a true story, that, because I made a video about that years ago. And that was quite alarming. And you see these little stories like that at the time, and you don't really join the dots at the time. I never thought about this. You saw, because you want, you're working and stuff like that. You want people out there getting all that information out. There's a lot of people out there doing it now. And going back years ago, it was happening then. Obviously, not on the scale as what we're seeing now, because obviously there's still a lot of we were still seeing problems with legal migration, obviously under Theresa May, etc. But the actual legal migration, asylum seekers, etc., has been going on for some years, like you rightly said. Not on the scale like it is now, but it's still been going on. Because if you remember yourself, I think it was about 4 years ago, it was nearly every day we were seeing a vehicle being stopped with 20, 30 asylum seekers, migrants on the back, being stopped in the M6, M1 and stuff like that. That still happens, but not on the scale as it used to do.
Yeah, but there's Craig's point now. Now, the government says, there's 1.9 million illegals in Britain, and that's apparently that's the whole of Britain. But according to the likes of Tesco's and Asda, that do the figures for the food that they're selling to people, it's more like 3 million. Because they're buying stuff in to feed a community, and maybe one city has 2 or 3 Asdas because it's a large city. I know the likes of Belfast now has a few Asdas and Tesco's and stuff. So they know who's buying what. It's like that, you scan your stuff out, they know how much stuff's going out the door. So if a population of 100,000 is spending on average 100 quid a week, that's a certain amount of money that Tesco's are getting. But they're getting 2 or 3 times that, because these people aren't documented and they're spending the same money. If that makes sense, Bonnie, they can figure it out from that. I have a question for you. This was at me earlier on. I have a question. Your thoughts on Nigel Farage?
Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, for me at the time when he was UKIP, even years before that, before UKIP become the entity, well, the power entity, whatever, when it did. I like what he said because he was in the popular eye. He was he was popular. And a lot of people like what he said, and I still think the same now. I think you go onto Twitter, if you watch GB News, he hits home with some very salient points. But I just think it's just hitting home. That's all he's doing. And I think for a lot of people who sort of followed events in recent times, who've probably put a lot of time and effort into trying to change things, they don't see Farage as the solution to what's going on. But at the same time, what we're seeing across Europe, we've seen the popular vote again, more the so-called populist vote, people voting for people, the centrist on the right, taking power, and that's my personal opinion. I think that's the direction. The only chance we have to change in the UK. That's my own opinion. I don't think it's Farage. I think his time has come. I was very disappointed with Farage because I think when the Brexit thing, which I said it even not long after, it was never meant to happen. It's never happened. When he just sort of walked away. I think the money's a big factor with Farage for me. I just think he's a very money-orientated person. I really do. I don't hate the guy. I don't really dislike him, to be honest with you, because I think, like a lot of people say, he's like a gatekeeper, if you want to use that expression, that he does get people on board, because a lot of people do see him as sort of like, I call him the acceptable face of the right in this country. Let's say that the guy Fox, a lot of people like him. He's not my cup of tea, to be honest with you. But people accept him. Do you know what I mean? There's the acceptable face of the right in this country, if there is a right in this country, that is. But like I said, it's just a shame about UKIP, because I still think if UKIP UKIP, they've had that breakthrough when the MPs. I know they had 2 Tory MPs who defected, but if they'd have actually won seats themselves, again, I'm not saying things would have changed dramatically, but it would have been nice to see things change, because that's what we've got to try and do at some level, is to change the system in this country. But it's just against you. And I honestly think this, and I mean this again, it's my opinion, is that I don't think anybody is going to ever be allowed again, anybody like Nigel Farage or anybody, it could be anybody less not as well known as Nigel Farage, to raise that momentum and maybe challenge the powers to be, the establishment. I don't think it'll ever be allowed to happen again, not in my lifetime anyway. And like I said, hopefully I'm wrong. But that's my sort of truthful sort of like little 2-minute soundbite about Nigel Farage. I don't really dislike him. Disappointed me. I think he does more good than bad. I agree with what some people said. I said this some years ago. I should give credit to people who have been doing the activism when it comes to going out to, like, you get your Steve Laws and other people. And there's other people who do a lot more than Steve Laws as well, who do the channel crossing as well, who just don't get the media attention they rightly deserve as well.
What do you call him?
Yeah, well, there's Chris, what's his name? English Bulldog, his name. He does all the videos.
Yes. English Bulldog's in the chat there.
Yeah, English Bulldog tells, but it's Chris. I forget his bloody name as well. I've actually borrowed stuff off him in the past, and he does stuff for years. But he just keeps a bit of a low profile. And there's other people out there doing stuff or highlighting stuff, and you don't have to be necessarily in the what do you call it, the spotlight to highlight stuff. If like you said, nowadays everybody's got smartphones and there's that much happening around us. You know what I mean? If you're out there, you can almost film something, because that's what a lot of people do now. And you see it on, maybe not see it on Twitter. You might not necessarily see it on, what do you call it, Telegram. But you'll see stuff on TikTok where people are filming stuff saying, bloody hell, have you seen what's happened down the road? They've just moved into a hotel. And these are just a normal, everyday folk what are filming stuff. So, everything contribute to what's going, not to what's going on, but to highlight what's going on. So I might not answered that question 100%.
That's your opinion. My thoughts on Farage was, he got us out of Europe. My mother and father, in the 70s, my dad says this is going to end badly. My mum was the same. They had the same opinion on Europe, and they voted not to go in. At the time, I think it was 1975, wasn't it? But it wasn't the European Union at the time. It was like a trade agreement. And I've watched them over the years, and I've never really liked them. And then your man Nick Griffin from the BNP, he got elected into the European Parliament, and he told them it like it was. And Nigel Farage was put in to get rid of the BNP. Fair enough. Then he pushed your man, Prime Minister at the time, who disappeared off the face of the planet, to give us a referendum. And when the people voted the way that they didn't want to, they didn't like it. Boris campaigned to leave. But Boris didn't want to leave. He was hoping for a loss on that one. And when they got the answer the next morning, the whole place went nuts. Nigel Farage was quoted as saying, when we leave the EU, we can import more workers from Africa. But most people that were voting for Brexit were voting to keep people from Africa out. Why do we need African nurses? Why can't we train our own? We're taking their amenities and skills out of their country, so their people go without. And then he came across the Dublin one time, and he was giving a speech in some place, and he's supposed to be this British patriot. Then he shouts Chucky or La at the top of his voice. And I'm sort of going, definitely not our guy. That's just my thoughts, Paul. But he did do one good thing. He pushed the Conservatives to give us Brexit in the first place. So, oh, yes. No, I think we'll kick that one in the head. I watched this boy here, Michael Havers. I don't know, he used to be a member of the Brexit Party, along with Nigel Farage and stuff. And he does a wee nightly news show on what's happening. And this came out today. I thought it was very interesting, so I'll play it and get your thoughts on it. I have to get really, really posh like these boys and get myself double screens. Where is it? See now.
A lot of you who watch these videos are currently intending to vote for Reform UK, and I've done a lot of videos recently about the rise of Reform in polls. There is undoubtedly, of course, some very good people in the Conservative Party, and I know many of you will have actually voted Conservative back in 2019, and there are increasing signs of a rebellion in the Conservative Party, with many unhappy about the direction of travel of the party. And I think that is completely unsurprising, really, when you consider the fact, of course, that Boris Johnson, after winning that majority in 2019, was ousted. And then we had the Conservative members, of course, select Liz Truss as their choice and reject Rishi Sunak. And it ends up with Sunak in place as Conservative leader and Prime Minister. So the fact that there is significant disquiet, let's say, from many Conservatives at grassroots level, I feel ignored, I think, wholly unsurprising. You only have to look at comments this weekend from Jake Berry, himself, significant happening. A new Conservative organisation, Lord Cruddas involved in this, with an apparent plan, this new organisation, to plant rebels in every seat to challenge Rishi Sunak. Now, this is the Conservative Democratic Organisation, the likes of Lord Cruddas there as president. You've got David Campbell Bannerman as chairman. They say they're looking for CDO, Conservative Democratic Organisation, constituency, area and regional chairman to help promote democracy within the Conservative Party. Now, the fact that an organisation like that, with some serious people involved, is actually looking at constituency level suggests on a national and local level. So I think should be taken seriously. And it's interesting to look at some of the the parliamentary candidate and member of parliament is, and if they deselect their MP, they want a directly elected Conservative Party chairman and Conservative Party officers. They want to retain and reinforce the party membership's democratic right to choose the party leader. Well, that seems to have gone out the window to some extent. And the party constitution, they say, should be capable of being changed at a general meeting of the party by members of the party. So I think this is interesting, as I said, to see this new organisation spring up. And I think it is a reflection of many Conservatives deeply unhappy at events we have seen transpire in terms of the ousting of first Boris Johnson and then Liz Truss after she was elected by Conservative members over Rishi Sunak. Let me know what you make of this new organisation, guys. Do you think there's a Conservative rebellion brewing? Do you have sympathy with those objectives of this new Conservative Democratic organisation? I will keep bringing you all the very latest on this and more, so please do whack this video a quick thumbs up, and of course, as ever, cheers for watching.
Now, Bonnie, I've watched him for a while. There does seem to be a brewing in conservatism. There was a young fella in the youth conservative wing the day on the news, putting out his plots and his ideas on how to move forward as a conservative nation, bringing back conservative values and stuff. But I think, personally, the Conservatives are dead in the water. They are a dying entity. They just need to be put out of their misery. Same as Labour, basically. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you 100% what you just said. Then it doesn't matter what the Conservatives do or what they try and reinvent themselves, because I think that's what's going to happen. I think depending on there might be an early election next year. Obviously, it's going to be one in 2024, and to see what happens till then. I think if Labour just keep their head under the parapets, I think they'll win it. I'm not saying it's going to be a landslide, but I think they'll win it. because I don't think this cost of living crisis is going to go away. There's going to be another crisis, I imagine, before the next election as well. There might even be an early election. But you're right, what you said about the Conservatives. I think it's tearing itself apart inside because of what's going on. We're seeing, obviously, immigration is the big thing for a lot of people, just not just immigration, other things as well. The attack on the sort of the establishment in the sense of as way of life and tradition and stuff like that. When you sort of about Conservatives, because nobody knows what the Conservative Party stands for anymore. Nobody. There's probably members of the Conservative Party don't know what they actually stand for, because I don't know what they're conserving. Like the old thing is, what are they actually doing? What they're conserving? They're conserving nothing. Yeah. And it doesn't matter who's in charge. And we're thinking about this the other day because we're going to do the stream on New Year or whenever, New Year's Eve or whenever. And we're going to call it the year of the free prime ministers. That's what the stream's going to be called. We're going to look back at the sort of politics and the news from 2022. And and I was thinking about Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Sunak. And for me, there's no difference between any three of them. It's just it's a continuation of what they were doing, sort of thing. There's not been any upheaval in my sense. Yeah, they've changed things around with Sunak, sort of thing, but they're still going on the same direction. But when you read, if you're into this, I'm not particularly versed about the Conservatives, but I suddenly can know what of people on social media say, or former Conservative members or whatever, or Sunak's not their PM and stuff like that. And what they're harping on for is that sort of traditional Conservative, if you want to say that, you mentioned, and maybe bring back that nasty party they had in the 80s, because that's what I was brought up with. You know, we ended up, you had a party in the 80s what everybody hated, and you had a party on the left. And that's when you had this left and right was a bit more visible. You just don't see it anymore. And they're crossing over all the time. Obviously, they've adopted a woke sort of a stance. They're not pushing back against anything. They're all on board with diversity, multiculturalism. There's no, like I said, there's just no pushback whatsoever. And in the respect of illegal immigration, asylum seekers, they're doing nothing about it, like you said. And if I honestly believe this, and I think if the Conservative, if somebody was to lead the Conservative Party and really tackle immigration head on, and just forget about what people say, because that's what they dictate, obsessed what people say on social media. Just forget about all that. Do what they have to do. And I honestly think there'd be a lot of maybe working class people who did vote originally, who voted for him in the so-called North, the red wall, the North went to blue. They'd still vote Conservative, but I can see that wall going back to Labour. To be honest, I think I can see that. Things are definitely changed in this country politically. And we've still got this two-tier system. We're still going to have the Labour and Conservative. And what they're doing now, you can see this, especially, and they're both as bad. They're looking for the migrant vote. They're pushing out candidates, in certain areas. They're really going out of their way to get the so-called new Brits. And they'll do anything to get that new vote, because more likely the new voters will probably come out and vote for them rather than the sort of like the traditional voters who've sort of given up now on, when it's in some respects politics. Because I think a lot of people have given up. But they will, when it comes to the general election, they'll still vote Conservative and still vote Labour or Lib Dem, maybe. I just don't see things dramatically changing with the system we've got at the moment. I really don't. And especially the Conservatives. I agree. The first comment you made was right. Head in the water.
Well, there's Jimmy Cranky in drag in Scotland, and she's just been smashed another blow. Now, this woman is talking about giving 15-year-olds the vote. 16-year-olds, was it 15 or 16? Because they have the intelligence to, when I was 16 years old, I had a clue about anything, basically. Like most 16-year-olds, I was out with your mates and, look, there's that girl's got the hoops, that was it. But now 16-year-olds are mature enough to make political decisions. And apparently she wants them to run for government at 16. They can't own a house. They can't drive a car. They can't have a drink. They can't smoke. I don't think. I can't mind when the legal age for smoking is. But they can stand in Parliament and make political decisions. Children, and now she's talking about letting people that have come here illegally, who have got asylum, the right to vote. That, to me, is just important votes, Polly. Because it's like the Dems in America. The student loan repayments and handing people tens of thousands of pounds back just before an election. All these young people in university in America, I think it's called college, let's give them all money. They'll go out and vote for you because they got a big handout. It was their next door neighbour that was paying that big handout because he's working 60 hours a week to keep his family. But that'll buy us votes. Your thoughts?
What in the voting age in Scotland? We students?
Just the general.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I've obviously got family in Scotland, and the younger end, they're all SNP. The old tradition, the other, like my aunties, uncles, they're Labour. The older ones, the younger ones are all SNP. There's been a lot of indoctrination at school level, like there's in this country, obviously with the SNP. There's a lot of things what are going on across the north of the border. So I'll give a shout out for Resisting the Lies. He's the man that can fill you in there with a lot of the information. When it comes to the transgender stuff, the sexuality, of children, and it's something, like I said, I feel uncomfortable talking about it sometimes, not because I'm unknowledgeable about it, it's just an uncomfortable subject. And when we were growing up, when, like I say, 11, 12, even younger, it just never come into play. It was never an important factor in your life as you grew up. But that's one thing what I do really am against is the sexualization of children. I just think it's just sick. It really is. And again, I'm not homophobic. You can live what life you want to live. That's entirely up to yourself. But this relentless pushing, and it seems to me more like the transgender sort of stuff what's being pushed relentlessly. And like I said, the sexualization. I'm not the only person who says that. I'm very uncomfortable with it. I think a lot of people are. It's totally wrong. I think there's no easy way. There's no easy way to teach children about the birds and the bees, but we got taught at school, and you just know yourself what's happening. I think the generations now, kids now, are probably a lot more sexually active than we were when we were younger. They're a lot more versed what's going on because obviously all the pornography, what's easily available, which I thought was going to be stopped, but it's still there to be seen. And it's sort of like, in some ways, it's a bit fashionable as well in some respects. I remember reading about this as well in some people, the younger generation, that is. And I'm not condemning all young people because they're not all like that. But regarding students, you're on about in America, is it? In the vote as well? That's something I don't know. I know the asylum seekers are going to Scotland. If they're given right to stay, they can vote. But it's not on national elections. It's just local elections, isn't it? I'm led to believe.
I think it's local. Yes, you're right. It's not national elections.
Yeah.
It's
national
local.
election. You have to be a British citizen. I'm pretty certain about that. Local elections, and I think 16. Can they vote at 16 at local elections? I'm not right. They could be able to do that as well. I'm not particularly 100% sure about that. Or like, look, I don't know. It's a little bit different out there in Scotland because of the Scottish Parliament. They have a different. They obviously vote for that as well. But like, what did you say about in America? Did you mention something about America?
Yeah, that was the Americans. Biden, creepy Uncle Joe. He's excellent evidence that there is life after death and the living dead. You watch him there in them videos and them clips, and he's like, well, they're hilarious clips. Like the man's not all there.
Yeah, there's some. You're right. What you say. I used to follow Trump a lot, to be honest here, but I don't really follow too much about American politics. Obviously, I know Biden, and every time you see Biden, I watch him on. I don't know which. It might be on Twitter or something. It's Sky News, Australia Sky News. They've done some really funny things about him because they're quite good. Sky News from Australia. It's a lot different to the one in the UK. Believe me, they're totally different, and they're really for some stick for John Biden. It's really funny because some of the stuff he comes out with, it's just you think this guy's the most powerful man on the planet, allegedly, and I don't know what his handlers must think, but we talked about what Scottish Tam used to know quite a knowledge about this when he used to do the streams on Saturday with Tam, and he was telling us a lot of stuff about his background and stuff like that. Is it his son who lives a very nefarious lifestyle, and he's not, he's got a lot of baggage, but doesn't it just prove to you as well that how corrupt the American political system is as well, because it's just about purely money in America and who they're working for as well. Any right democracy, any right society, people like Biden wouldn't be in charge. They just wouldn't even get anywhere near it. But that's where we're at in respect to American politics. And I think you see more of an element, and I don't know too much about this. I'm probably going to be quoting sort of fashionable soundbite words, you know, the deep state and stuff like that. But you do actually factor that in with Biden, because you do question who's actually controlling him, because there must be people behind the scenes giving him the information just for him to sign stuff off, because I can't believe he's got he's just got that intelligence or something about him to do things. That's my own opinion about Biden.
There was a big giveaway when they interviewed Obama, and they said if he could have a third term. Now, I cottoned on to this at the debates between Trump and Biden and stuff. Trump told the television company not to give Biden an earpiece. They wouldn't go on stage if Biden had an earpiece. So it turns out then they had the smallest, tiniest earpiece in his ear. Now, Obama, in an interview, said a couple of months before, if he could have a third term as president, he would like to do it from his basement, in his slacks, in his jogging bottoms and all, and just talk to somebody in the ear, and they would just repeat everything he said. And you think to yourself, there's something in that. Because there's times there that Biden is completely, like, my poor mother has Alzheimer's. She's more cognitive than him, you know. And some of the stuff he comes out with, like that corn pop thing. And then he drove a 40-foot truck. And then he's finished in the top 3% of his class. And then when you go and hunt the figures and the actual facts, he was 87th out of 90 in his class. You know, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's a clone. Yeah, but, and then the whole Ukraine thing, the money that went from America, it's $100 billion, but it wasn't actually $100 billion in notes or gold bullion or anything like that there. It went there in crypto. And then we had the whole scandal there a couple of weeks back about the crypto place crashing and all the money going, allegedly, YouTube. Then it turns out that somebody had discovered that they were funneling the money back to America. And who was getting his cut? 10%, the big guy. You know, you couldn't make this stuff up. What was that fellow? They broke into the offices in America. I think it was Nixon or
Watergate, the Watergate scandal.
The Watergate.
Yeah.
You know, the Watergate pales in comparison to what's going on at the minute. You know, oh. So it's actually, yeah, we all know his wife isn't going on. You know, right, hang on, what do we have here? Here's one that I really love of yours. I'm going to share that. You can explain it after then. Right. How did you come up with that one? It's, you see, what I find, Bonnie, is you do things like that there, and a lot of people in the audience there are, they're bringing a tear to my left eye. The people remembering the choppers and the budgies and the bogies we used to make out of wood with the pram wheels and things. Now, is that from childhood memories, or is that just stuff you've picked through, or you've done a bit of research into, or
Well, no, everything you see there, and imagine it's something I can relate to. Every single image, whether it's the bogey carts, whether it's playing on a swing, whether it's the marbles, the fireworks, and all that sort of stuff. And it just brings back so many great memories. And it's something, like I said, I think we've always got to remember what we had and what we've still got in some respects. And I don't think it's really important. So videos like that for me are quite very nostalgic. They're sad in some respects, but sometimes they're not. They're happy because they were great times. They want. We have too much black pill stuff at the moment, so I like to make little videos like that. They're quite uplifting to remember your childhood, and it's so sad to think that your grandchildren or your children now won't have the same childhood what we had, and it wasn't all about money and stuff like that. It was just we went out, we used his imagination, we had adventures, and it was just a fantasy. Like you said, your home life might not have been the best home life, but your childhood, for me, well, personally speaking, that was a great childhood. The adventures we got up to. Like people talking about chopper bikes, grifter bikes. We called it progging when we used to go for the bonfire and stuff, when we like chomping and stuff like that. That was a massive thing where I lived, absolutely huge. All the streets around where we lived, they'd have like a bonfire. We had the spare ground, and the community was there. People would get together. You just don't see stuff like that anymore, sadly. And it's sad. It's a sad sort of times we're living in. The one thing I've noticed in probably the last 20 years, a lot of the places where I used to play on spare fields, playing fields, they've all been sold up. That's under the Conservatives, even Labour councils. They've been sold up and bought, and houses have been built on them. Really sad that is. And there's literally is when people say there's nowhere to go. And I don't come from a city at all, and I live sort of near a rural area. I do now anyway, but when I brought up, it was slightly different. All them places now, there's just nowhere to go. Honestly, I'm not just saying this. You'd have to walk. Well, you couldn't walk. You'd have to drive to a local leisure centre to play football now. As well, when we were kids, you could just knock a ball about. You can't. There's just nothing there anymore. So them videos, they're there to rekindle what we had, and I think it's important what we still fight for today, but to still fight for us past as well. And what I mean by that, don't let people knock us and stuff like as children and stuff like that. We had a great time as kids, and like I said, we're not to do with money, we're not to do with materialism. A bag of marbles, it was just stuff like that. We don't want any of this stuff, gadgets, what we see nowadays. So, I like making lots of. I've made loads of little videos like that, and they bring back good memories, and that's what they're there for. And so I appreciate you playing that, Ragnar.
Yeah, no, this is why I got into it, because I was sitting watching through, and you're just sitting there, and I don't know about anybody else in the chat, but when they locked us all down, I didn't wear masks. I didn't stay in the house. And I went down to the shop and got what I needed. I didn't wear a mask in the shop either. People looked at me funny, because there are all these wee grannies and grandfathers driving about. And the two people in a car with masks on. And I'm driving along going, you don't know how fucking ridiculous you are. Are you avid BBC watchers? Mothers covering their children's faces, wee tiny things, wouldn't come up to my knee with big cloth masks, reducing the oxygen to their brain. And then everybody wonders why the education has slipped over the last 3 years and kids aren't as smart. What was it? What was the stat? Boys leaving primary school in England are reading at a P5 level or less when they get into secondary school. Now that came out as a stat. Some lady was on the news was actually saying that she had done a study on it. They're reading at a 5-year-old's level, yet they're 11, 12 and up into big school, secondary or grammars or whatever. And that just broke my heart. And then when you watch stuff like that there, all the memories come flooding back to the childhood, running about in the summer, going up to the Mount Sandal Forest. It used to be a Norman fort. There's a big cradle in the middle of it. It used to be the actual mounds of the fort, and the thing was built on the top. And we used to pretend, we were the Normans, and the Vikings were coming up the van, and we'd have to go and defend. But then I wanted to be a Viking, so wonder why. What you're doing there is bringing memories back to people, and a lot of ones in the chat are saying the exact same thing there. I don't know.
I'll just say something, Ragnar, as well. The great thing about that childhood, for myself, and I imagine a lot of people in the chat, and yourself included, we all come from different parts of the UK, but we shared all that as one, if that makes sense. So there were people probably in the north of Scotland doing exactly the same as you guys in Ulster in Northern Ireland. Yep. Same with guys in Cardiff were doing the same stuff as London. It wasn't just exclusive to one area. We had all that shared identity and the shared culture, you know what I mean? And that's something, it's with us, and it'll be with us till time immemorial. But it's sad, what compared to what the childhood we had in the 80s, it could have been the 70s, 80s, compared to what the childhood is like now. Do you know what I mean? I think that's one thing I feel sorry for my children, is that they missed out on that, and I think the generations did. So yeah, it's great to remind people. It really is. It is great, because most people, like you said there, you were just reminiscing yourself. They have fond memories, and that's what we sometimes need to remember. The good things in life, rather than continually talking or remembering the bad things in life.
Yeah, well, there's Bering. He points out, like, we would have had curbsy, football, me at one side of the street, you at the other. I toss it across, one-handed, hit the curb, it bounces back, that's a point to me. If I miss and you catch it, that's a point to you, whatever it was. And then
Kirby, we used to play that, Kirby. Yeah.
And then Dangerfield, a couple of years back, he done a similar stream on the regions and what we called stuff. So he would ask me what I would have called curbsy, or what bang and run, banging somebody's door, bolting, lighting a brown paper bag on somebody's doorstep, a dog turd on it, things like that there. And then he done the thing about it was in the same stream, it was about the British nursery rhymes. And the British nursery rhymes are all about death. Ring a rosies, pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. I think that was about the Black Death. And then the other one was how to teach children about the churches or the cathedrals around the cities, the bells of St. Clement's. They use nursery rhymes to teach kids. What do they do now? This is a man on a dress. He's called Simon. He's transgender. To 5-year-olds, and it just boils my piss every time I see it on the telly. There's your man, what do you call him? Odin's Men video, the YouTuber, and he picks through them out of TikTok and all these people. And this is the next generation of fighting people, or what would be, the next generation of human beings. There's this thing that he's standing there in a dress, and he's got wee boobies, and he calls them his wee boobies, and he's trans, whatever it's called. And I'm saying, Jesus Christ, take me off this planet, because it would drive you nuts. I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff, Molly, but it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I've seen that. Is it called, similar to what you're probably talking about, retards off TikTok?
Yes.
A lot of that stuff as well. You get that all over the place, and it's just insanity in what you see. Some of it's funny, you can laugh at it, but there is an element in it where it's not funny, because like you rightly said, these are the future generations, and a lot of these are teachers as well, because there's one called Teachers on TikTok as well, retard teachers or something it's called, and especially in America, I think most of them are American teachers, but the boundaries, what they can do, it's really frightening, and a lot of this is coming over to the UK. A lot of teachers are trying to adopt sort of the American stance when it comes to the teaching of children, and especially, like we said again, the sexualization of children. But when you see some of these teachers on TikTok again from America, and really over promoting the transgender issues, he, she, and stuff like that, and these are teachers, they're not like, it's in a school, it's not like it's made up, and and you just bloody think, what the hell is going on? Like you said, there's a funny side to it because you laugh at it and think, but then you sit back and think, bloody hell, it's not funny. It's because these are actually, when that video is finished, for example, she could go into a classroom and teaching children, and they have all the stuff in the class. You've probably seen them where they have all the gay banners and the transgender banners and stuff like that. It's certain states what do that. It's not all the states. Some states like California are very liberal. And then you've got Oregon, Portland, where that seems to be like the mecca of where these people come from. And you've got little areas, because the school districts are different to another school district. But that's one thing. I know it's maybe a subject for another day, but the continued pushing of the sort of transgender issue, because we talk about it a lot on a Saturday. Obviously, you guys talk. Everybody talks about it now. As years ago, it was just laughed at, but now it's become very serious.
Well, most of the sort of bigger YouTubers have covered actually call it for what it is. It's the slow march to the institution. There was a defecting Russian agent, and he explained on video, this is way back in the day, can't remember his name, that this is what the Soviets had for the Western world, to infiltrate the education systems. Now, apparently, Nigel Farage covered this maybe only about 4 years ago, that so many private schools in England had been bought up by the Chinese. And what were they putting in the library in the school? All communist literature. No, but if you look at the universities now, there's the young girl in America, there's a young girl in England. The girl in America, her mother was paying £3,000 to get her undoctrinated. She went in, this beautiful young girl, expecting, to learn and do all her ambitions and fulfill all her dreams and stuff. And within about 6 months, she came back and she was a leftist, fucking ring through the nose and face full of metal. And the mother had to have her deprogrammed, basically. £3,000 a day it was costing her. I don't know if you've seen that story, but
no, sorry, I've not seen it now.
It was what do you call that fella? Tucker Carlson interviewed the mother, and it took them months to deprogram this wee girl back to normal. Whereby she could become part of the family again. She just, when she got back home, she hated everybody. That's it there.
I've just finished reading a book, or listening to an audio book about Scientology. So it might be on them sort of lines as well, because that's quite frightening. The sort of propaganda, it's not maybe on a different level to what you're talking about there, but that were interesting anyway about Scientology.
Yeah. Is Tom Cruise not one of them guys?
Tom Cruise, he's one of the big, the main hitters, contributors to Scientology. It's just an interesting thing. Sometimes you hear about it, and just an audio book. I listened to it, I finished it the other day. Then it just gave me a bit of information I didn't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, it's seen a thing, but then again, there was a. Did you ever see the interview with Tom Cruise? And he was promoting that film, The Trippets. They didn't call it The Day of the Trippets.
Yeah.
But it was based on that film.
War of the Worlds.
Did you see that? I don't vote too. Did you see the video of the interview he did about the indoctrination of the children in America? And giving them
I know one thing about Tom Cruise on it. I think he will stipulate any interview he does, you're not allowed to ask him about Scientology. If you do, he just curtails the interview. That's it. It's over. Yeah. So no, I haven't seen that. I'm sorry.
No, I've not spoken out and I'll send it to you on Telegram. It was very interesting because he called them all out on it. They're literally dumbing down the youth of America. Where Dangerfield talks about when we were at school, you and myself and Dangerfield, we're around the same age, and there was two guys in the playground, and it'd be rough and tumble, and you were playing football, and just kids being kids. Kids can't be kids anymore. They have to be like we pigeonholes. You know, Johnny's transgender now. Yes, we have to give him a safe space. Melanie, she wants to be a guy now. We'll have to give her a safe space. They're just not allowed to be children. As you say, there was sexualization of them and stuff, which I think is vile. Far enough, yesterday, not just in America. And it seems to be worldwide, only in the West though. It's not in China, not in Japan.
But don't you think, if you expand on this, you talk that particular issue, it's also, there's a deeper issue at hand as well. We've seen this when we were young. I imagine you're saying yourself, and again, I imagine people in the chat, when you're at school, you were taught a particular lesson, but you were never sort of indoctrinated. You were never pushed like an anti sort of element. In a sense, when I say that, an anti your own people element, if you understand what I mean. You want demonising what we've done as a people. We want demonising what individuals and through as history. I remember at school, we used to have, like, similar to what they have now at history, we'd have like a particular period. We talk about the Tudor time, we talked about the Roman times, we talked about the Industrial Revolution, we talked about inventors, scientists, but we talked about them in a great light as innovators for what they actually were. And it gives you a sense of pride, that, and you think, bloody hell, even when you're a young boy, you think this 8-year-old, 9-year-old reading a book about, because you used to get the Ladybird books, if you remember them.
Yeah.
You get one about Robert the Bruce, you might have Captain Cook, and used to read them. Easy little reads, but gives you little sound bites of information, bite-sized information about the particular people. And you sort of, even when at a young age, you sort of correlated the fact we were Great Britain, because we, I know that there's sorry, I'm talking too fast. The Romans give us that sort of the wordage, and it come back again, obviously, through history, especially in the Victorian times. So we were a great people. And I just find now when you, and I know this from my own experience, from my own children, when they're being taught history, and you see this all the time on the news about the black curriculum having been pushed and why it's being pushed. And it's being pushed at the detriment of our history. It's being pushed because then it's demonising what we've achieved as a people. And that's what sickens. That's one thing that gets really me angry as well. Like you rightly said about the sexualisation thing, about indoctrination of children. It's much the same as in America. We're seeing the pushback against Christopher Columbus. For God's sake, they're taking statues down of Christopher Columbus. Yes. They've even taken one down of John. I think they've taken one down of John Smith, on Pocahontas and stuff. It's absolutely insane. And we just mirror what they're doing. We just, like I said, it's like we just literally copy what they do. And that's quite frightening. But it's just all levels at school now. You're not allowed to be proud of who you are. But this is another thing, sorry about taking over, is...
No, fire away, sir. That's why you're here.
You'll see different cultures and people coming to this country. Like you saw in Northern Ireland, you talked about it last week, about the Syrians. Pleased that people are learning Arabic and stuff like that and learning their culture. But the thing that really sickens me, so people learn their culture, the language and the culture, etc. That's great. So these Syrian people can still speak their own language, still practice their own culture, their own religion, etc. in Northern Ireland. Nobody's got a problem with that. But when you want to do it, when you want to continue your culture, your way of life, it's demonised. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You can't be doing that. You know what I mean? It's just such a fucking hypocrisy. And I'm sorry about swearing on your stream. It really annoys me, that.
Yeah, I swear all the time because I'm not as sort of as calm as most people. Jack, he always says to me, he says, try and tone down on the F's, because the algorithms will pick up on it. And I heard Dangerfield mention this one time. The algorithms pick up on what you say. So if you say the F word, or you say this, or you say that, they'll pick up on it, and then that's what ends up getting you strikes and bits and pieces. I don't know if there's actually any truth in it, but no, I try and tone things down. But you sort of, only you get that passionate about it because this is a harm that's being pushed on our children. Yet if we say anything about it, we're right-wing Nazis. Because all these other people, they need to have their space and their place. They can have their space and their place in their own homeland, not mine. My forefathers and your forefathers, and many ones in the chat there, their forefathers didn't build Britain or America or anything for anybody else but their own people. That does sound racist, but it's a fact. What is racism? It's a man looking to protect his family, his community, his nation, his homeland, because it was built for him by his forefathers. That's all I see the big R word as. Do you think that you and me could move to, say, the likes of Saudi Arabia and open a nice big Christian church and get all our Christian brothers and sisters in? Would we fuck? But you look at England and there's mosques popping up everywhere. But do you're not in. Sorry for the rant.
No, it's right. Like you said, if you turn it round, and the arguments, it's invalid, isn't it? Why we're not allowed to celebrate his own culture and identity. Everyone's got their own interpretation of that as well, the tradition and stuff like that. But it's almost, we get frowned upon and we get demonised. But when other people come into the UK, it's okay for them to retain their culture and identity, because we're told of these so-called the beautiful people, we don't have any identity or culture. We're told all the time we don't have a culture, because we borrow it off everybody. We're told all the time that everything what we've done as a people, we've taken it off other people. It's unbelievable. That's what we're told. I've seen this. So Gary Lineker said it about, we did that video a couple of years ago about the fish and chips, and saying that about we've always been a nation of immigrants, and the platitudes have come out. Anything they can do to demonise you as a people, they will do. But then at the same time, they'll elevate other people, their culture and their identity from Africa, from the West Indies. They're fantastic. It's great what they can do. They can have the carnivals, they can have the celebrations. It's absolutely, absolutely brilliant. We'll give them as much money as they want because it's great. You lot, you're going to get the exact opposite. You're going to get ridiculed. We're going to curtail. We're not going to give you any money this year for bonfire night, which has happened. We're not going to do the Christmas decorations this year as well. We're not going to happen. But we'll pump a load of money into other religious festivals and stuff like that, because we've got to keep harmony within certain groups, because that's a fact as well, because that's happened a lot. A lot of the bonfire displays were cancelled, a lot of the money was withheld, and a lot of the Christmas decorations council stuff like that cancel it, but they were happy to do it for the other festivals in the wake of the so-called cost of living crisis. I thought I'd get that off the chest. That.
Well, there's Croke Park in Dublin. Now, to the Irish people, Croke Park is basically sacred. It's where they staged the revolution against the British. Now, I don't know if you've actually visited here before, but we have, like my grandmother was a very, very devout Catholic, and she would have scrubbed the chapel steps on a Saturday till they were white and her knuckles were gone. Two bonny lads on the stream. And she would have, she would have been straight down on a Sunday morning and Mass, and then Mass on Christmas Eve, and whenever she could get there. Ireland's very much the same, and the wee Irish Catholic ladies down there, the Catholic families, they all pour into chapel on a Sunday. They weren't allowed to go to chapel because of the lockdowns, but yet they let the Mohammedans use Croke Park to hold Ramadan, where they all put their mats down, stick their arse in there, and glue their foreheads to the mat, 5 times a day. And they put a video out on that there, and that really boiled me. The people of Ireland couldn't go to celebrate their God, but yet they would let them do that. Any thoughts?
No, you're right. We're saying, because I remember that. I think that happened in some places in England. I think Blackburn Rovers. They opened the stadium up for prayers and stuff like that. I'm pretty certain they did. I could be wrong with that. I've seen that a lot of stuff like that in recent times. It's all to do with a bit of virtue signalling from these sporting establishments. It's just like you said. It's a smack in the face, isn't it? When you see stuff like that, and it's just really annoying. And it's something I'm seeing a lot of in recent times, because obviously the wave of refugees coming over and asylum seekers, illegals, whatever. And it's almost like we've got to again kowtow to what their beliefs and their what they believe in, sort of thing, their culture and identity and all that sort of stuff as themselves. So we've got, I don't know, it's just weird. It's like being in it's clown world, but it's so surreal. You think you're going to wake up, this can't be happening, but it's happening. And I'm not saying these stories and these events happen on a daily basis. I'm not saying that at all, but over the year, like I said, in 2022, we could pick probably a dozen stories if we spent some time doing a bit of research of particular events of this particular nature. And we saw that another story from Northern Ireland. I played it. I put it on Telegram. of the lady. I think she was in Derry, or you can / Londonderry, depending on your faith.
Londonderry.
Yeah. And she was saying there was a black lady. She had a shop in there, but she was complaining because not enough people knew how to do Afro hair, for example. You know, and it becoming since not in systemic racism, it's a form of racism. I couldn't believe it. And
because Londonderry is full of black people.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean. It's almost it was an issue for this lady. But I looked at the news reporter who was reporting it because she said Derry, and she's a Catholic. And my family's Catholic and Protestant, and it's a long story that. So I'm not having to go at the lady, but you could tell her politics straight away. So she was pushing this lady's agenda. The lady was from Africa. She'd come as a refugee, asylum seeker, whatever. She opened this shop up, and she couldn't understand it why not enough white hairdressers could learn how to do Africa. You just couldn't make it up. And even like you said, you'd have to watch it on Telegram. I'm sure I posted it on my YouTube channel. On a live stream we did a couple of weeks ago. And it was a form of, because there's about 50 different forms of racism. But she said it's a form of racism, casual racism or something. So people who've been in Londonderry for 30, 40 years doing women's hair and men's hair and stuff like that, all of a sudden, because they haven't been doing Afro hairs, black people's hair, it's an issue. Do you know what I mean? So they're actually pushing this out as well. I don't know if you knew about that. They're actually pushing it when you learn to become a qualified hairdresser. You've got to take an extra course level in Afro hair as well, because it's been highlighted a lot. And if you Google that, you'll see a lot of stories about that on the BBC as well. But like you said, would they complain the other way around? No, they wouldn't. If it was the other way around, no would be said about them.
It's literally clown work. You couldn't make this shit up.
Well, that's what it is. It's only like it's very petty, but it's little. It's maybe considered slights for some people. It's not sort of relevant, but it's a continuation. And if you go back years and years ago, it's like it's just sort of manifesting itself now. And I'm a great believer in what I'm going to say. I made a video a couple of years ago. And it was all about culture wars, and it was just basically I said we've lost them. We lost them 10, 20 years ago, and now because of what's happened, I'm not going to use that word in the left because I don't think it's the left and right anymore as such. I don't think we can define it now in British society. But there's a group of people now who are showing their hands. It's like the poker hands. They're telling you what you've got, and they're telling you what they're going to do or potentially what they're going to do. As years ago, they were sort of like hesitant, like the poker face expression. But now they're showing the full hand. And that's why I look at it. And that's when I made the video, because when you look at a lot of stuff, what's happened, even this year, last year, and stuff like that, and you sort of put it together, and again, it's my opinion, this, and you realise we're lost. We've lost it a long time ago. And you can go back so many years ago, and you sort of question even then, and people who questioned it then at the time, I didn't really believe them, to be honest with you. I just thought, no, you're just talking silly. You're being a bit OTT. But they were right what they said. They call them soothsayers. Back in maybe not a long time ago, what they were saying, you could even go back to Enoch Powell, going back even a lot further from a lot of people that have been obviously around when Enoch Powell was around. But you look at people, what they were saying, and you just think you couldn't. I wouldn't have believed what people have said then. I wouldn't have believed what they said 30 years ago, even 20 years ago. I was a bit on board with things, but when it comes to a lot of other issues, what we're seeing manifest itself, and especially levels of the education system and all the institutions. I never thought the royal family would be where it is now, and I actually said this again on a stream. I did a stream because I do streams by myself for quite a few years, and I did quite a long stream. It was all about the royal family, and one of the things I actually said, I can remember this clearly, this will be the last institution to fall. I think the armed forces have gone, and I think the royal family, and in my eyes, the royal family has fallen. I think it's gone now, or it's literally it's going to go. And that's one institution I honestly thought would be the last thing you'd see go so woke and just change unbelievably in front of your own eyes. I just never thought that would happen the way it's happening. And it's happening, it's just accelerating rapidly as well, what's going on. I'm not going to get involved in the Netflix thing because I don't watch it. I'm like you, Ragnar, I just see the news. I see people talk about social media, make some funny memes, little videos about it, and that's about it. But yeah, that's the thing what's poignant to me, because I went through the institutions what I thought had gone, and the last one was the royal family. Whether you're a royalist or not, it's irrespective. But that for me is the last sort of institution what's been under attack in some respects for some years, and I think it's fallen or it's going to fall. That's my opinion. Yeah. So I'll put that video in as well if you want to play it at some point.
Oh yeah, that's what I have no notion what that was. I thought, why have I got two bonny lads in there? I'm still learning this stuff, Bonnie. You have to bear with me a second. I'll go at the street.
Did not build Britain. Men like this throughout the ages helped to build Britain. Yeah, that's a video I'm very proud of, and I deliberately chose them images, and I did go to a lot of different cities. You got Govan, for example, that's where my family's from. Liverpool, you got the dock, East End of London, believe it or not, some images. I think Derbyshire, and all different places. I tried to do as much as I could with that image, just to highlight the people throughout the generations what built this country.
Yeah,
if you want to call it great, and it's something I'm immensely proud of. Those men and women. It's not just women.
yeah.
But I did choose the word men for that video because obviously white males are constantly, especially working class, don't have a voice anymore in this country. Regardless of, that's my opinion. I just don't think we have a voice anymore. So that's why I chose the working title for that video. And again, thanks for playing that, Ragnar.
No, here, it's my pleasure. What I do find about your videos is you do put the man and the working in the mines, or the shipyards, or what our trades were years ago. And you do put the woman as a role of mother or grandmother, or hanging out the washing, scrubbing the steps. That's the way things were. Where we each had a role, and nobody fucking complained about it. When we got up a bit, my grandmother used to look after us when we were babies, because my mum was a nurse, my father was an engineer, a telecom engineer. And the whole family came together to look after and bring up the children. Now, modern day people, not say, 20 years ago, but now young couples, I'm seeing more young couples out today doing the same thing, and grannies getting involved. But there was a period of about 20 years ago where people were just having kids after kids after kids and just firing about the fucking door, and they didn't care what they did or where they went. I don't know if you've seen the same thing happening, Bonnie, but I did see it for a long while there, and now you're seeing, they're thrust upon us all the time. That is another thing that bothers my piss in advertisements, is the mixed race couple. They equate for 0.6% of the British population is mixed race couples. Yet every time you turn on the TV, there they are, celebrating Christmas. You have the ones in the headscarves, the followers of Alan's snack bar, celebrating Christmas. No, they don't, but this is all indoctrination. In my opinion, Bonnie, I'm not too sure your thoughts on it, but it just seems to be all indoctrination. That's why I switched the TV off a year ago.
Yeah, it's we've seen this back for some years. I'm like probably a lot of guys in the chat are probably watching, listening. Is I don't watch television as such, but you can't get away from it. The imagery, even if you're on the computer, you're getting advertisements coming up when you're looking on various things. You may be buying stuff or paying a bill. Go on the bank, you see it all the time. Yeah, it's a little bit like you said. It's over the top. I posted something on Telegram last week about this. It was a recent survey from I think it's Digital Online, particularly. I don't know how I found this information, but I did. And even they pointed out the facts, the population of this country, and what you're saying there about the BAME population, how many times they're on telly. It's continuously pushed. That's the great thing about Argentina winning the football tonight in some respects, is because even when I didn't watch the match, I was just watching the goal thing, which is like a what do you call it, like being text, if you know what I mean, on BBC, whatever. And I could see a couple of the commentators or the sports commentators who were really pushing. You could tell they wanted France to win. I just had that gut feeling they wanted France to win, and they'll be sick that Argentina will win. And they're working out, there'll be an underlying reason for saying, it's because of the war and things like that. I think that's irrelevant. I think they wanted France to win to trump the England's European team who won the Euros this year. So it's been a bad year in sporting terms, especially football, when you see the England women's team win the Euros and the Argentina team winning the World Cup. So that'll upset a lot of people, because I did have a meme for that. I made that meme, what I put on my... I don't know if you can... I'll share that with you if somebody's seen, because it's quite a good one.
Yeah.
I think, isn't
Can
it?
I ask mods in the chat if you can drop Bonnie lads links, and who's the mod there? There's Streaky Bacon, Manavan Skywalker. If you guys can get Bonnie lads, it's Bonnie lads news on YouTube. Isn't that right, Bonnie?
What's that?
Your Bonnie lads news on YouTube.
What, my YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... I'll just put it in chat if you want. Because what they do now is they do it a lot easier now, don't they? I don't know if you knew this. I only knew this last week. They do it in such a way that you just have like an handle. So I'm just... I'll put the handle in. It's probably easy if anybody wants to give us a sub, they can do.
It's up there. October has it as... Billy has it up as Amigos News.
Yeah, it's just... That's an easy way to do it. I'm all over the place. Absolutely all over here at the moment. Yeah, it's Amigos News. You'll see it come up. Somebody's done that, and that's the handle they call it, at Amigos News 1 as well. That's what I've started to use as well. So if anyone wants to give us a sub, I really appreciate that. It's be good stuff. It's struggling, like I said, to get good people. Which I think same as yourself, Ragnar. You get a really good audience, a very loyal audience, which is good. Build your channel up. Same with myself. We have a very shared audience as well, so it's good stuff.
No, I started, somebody had said to me, start putting your links in your description all the time. And I have 2 other backup channels if this one gets nuked.
What YouTube channels?
Yeah. It's like Simon Sideways. They're never going to silence that man. I don't know how many freaking YouTube. He opened another one this week because he had been... He had been got another strike, and he's just waiting, because he says it's a matter of time before they come for him.
Who's that?
Simon Sideways.
Oh yeah.
He's now started the white positive thing, because he's actually woken up and smelled the coffee and sees what's going on. What else? What was it? But he wants now to do a persona of himself in a shirt and a tie, presenting facts and what's going on around the place, because he's actually cottoned on to what's going on around the place. Somebody else mentioned it in the chat there about Alice in Wonderland that came out there.
I've got that video for you if you want to play it. That one about in Northern Ireland about the hairdresser.
I'll just finish this one and then I'll put that straight in. It was about, was it 2 or 3 years ago, Bonnie? And it was your woman, what do you call her, Angelina Jolie, and she was the mother of Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland, and both of them were mixed race kids. Now, if you read the books, Peter Pan was this little white guy. Alice in Wonderland, long, glowing blonde hair with bright, sparkly blue eyes. Yet they turned it and they basically raped it. You couldn't make it up. I'm going to play this for you now.
But I remember about 9 years ago, I needed my hair to be done and done right. And I went everywhere, and I was actually shocked that nobody knew how to work with my hair. So I had to just go online and just buy wigs.
Being turned away from a hairdresser because of your hair texture is just one example of an everyday racial inequality. And equal access to services is one of many issues the racial equality strategy is designed to deal with.
Most of the hairdressers in Londonderry, for instance, would love to offer this service. They don't turn people away out of any malice. It's just because they don't have the know-how. If they did, they would be able to offer it. It's not an intentional segregation, if you know what I mean. But if the education was readily available, they would mostly go for it.
That's where you're at.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it up.
I just want to give a shout out to Billy there and anybody that bought me a coffee. Very much appreciated. Kathleen, no, that's Kat. Yeah. Some of these people have some weird blimmin' freaking email names. Planet X Hunter. Yeah, I know who that is. Billy Blogs and all. Yeah. Now, can anybody tell me if DJ's on at half past? Resisting the lies, is he streaming the night? Bonnie.
I'm just going to check now. I'm just going to check on his Telegram page.
I didn't see him anything up the night. Not
I don't
today.
think he is. I don't think he is, no. He's not
So let's get on. We can run on about if you want to.
Yeah, it's up to you, mate. Yeah, I'm fine.
I just don't like stepping on other content makers' tools. Here's one that came up today just before we started, and I just caught it. These people boil my freaking whiz. The Linekers and the Nevilles of the planet. This is from Rotten Politics. Rotten Politics is doing
Everyone welcome. Politics is in everything now, isn't it? It's being forced into everything now, and everyone's using their voice to scream about political issues at the detriment of things of tradition, like football.
And I do believe that we have rotten politics, and I'm not using that as an exaggeration.
You've seen them kneeling for BLM. You've seen them wearing armbands for Pride. You've also seen them being banned from using poppies, even though it was rescinded. Well, now, we're actually paying pundits, because that's all this man is, a pundit, ex-footballer, on quite a custy wage, I might add. I don't see him dipping into his own pocket for this, by the way, as he decides, instead of just talking about the football like he's being paid to do, and like people are watching for him to do, he's decided to go full-on political and full-on one-sided political bias. Let's have a listen. This is Gary Neville taking the biscuit, as Nigel Farage said.
Detest low pay. We should detest poor accommodation and poor working conditions. And that is something that we can never, ever accept in this region or in any region. And it is just worth mentioning that we've got a current government in our country who are demonising rail workers, ambulance workers, and terrifyingly nurses. So in our country, we've got to look at workers' rights, but certainly when football goes now, we have to make sure we pick up on workers' rights wherever it goes, because people have got to be equal and they've got to be treated equal. We can't have people being paid an absolute pittance to work. We can't have people in accommodation which is unsavoury and disgusting. We can't have that. That shouldn't happen here with the wealth that exists, but it shouldn't happen in our country that our nurses are having to fight for an extra £1 or an extra £2 either.
Got an absolute nerve, hasn't he? He's one of the richest men in the country. Well, not the richest, but 25 million dollars is in the upper echelon, isn't he? And yet he's saying that we're the ones that will have to pay for this, because if you pay all of these pay rises, it will have to come out of taxes. The government doesn't have money. Obviously, Gary never wants to be a Labour politician, so this is his way of soapboxing himself and putting himself first, obviously, because let's be honest, he's not helping out in any way other than crying about it, is he? He wants your money, you know, the working class and the poor. He wants your taxes to be going to people that are on much higher wages. Nurses, it's approximately 30 to 37,000 on average. Train drivers, 100,000 on average. So it's not like they're at the bottom of the food chain, is it? But he wants us to pay for that. Absolutely shocking. Use your platform for what you paid for, you plum. People don't tune in to ITV football to watch a fraggle like you use it as an excuse to try and be a Labour MP. You know, typical socialists, they're only happy when they're spending everybody else's money, not their own, obviously. Everybody else's, like yours. Stay sane. See you on the next one.
That's right in politics. He's doing some good stuff. Your thoughts on Neville, Bonnie?
Yeah, I saw that today. That I saw on Twitter. That he's done it. It's not the first time he's done it as well, and he's given a platform to do it as well. Like I said, like a lot of these guys, he's a bit of an hypocrite in some respects. Like it's not going to come out of his money. We talked a little bit about this yesterday about the strike, the nurses. I don't have too much sympathy for him. Like, again, a good article today. They knew what profession they were getting into, and I said this yesterday. These are young people who are on strike. They're not like all the older older people. They knew when they were going on strike that they knew what the pension they were going to potentially get, the retirement age, and the rates of pay, etc. So, they know. So they're just going on strike for the sake of it. And he's just doing a bit of virtue signaling. That's all he's doing. I can see him becoming a Labour politician. I really can. A Labour MP, because I know he's a member of the Labour Party. And I'm not sure if he was at the Labour conference as well. I'm pretty certain he was. So I think we're seeing a lot more at Neville. I think he'll still do his football stuff. He'll be getting paid, I don't know, £500,000 a year for doing that. Then he'll eventually one day maybe become a Labour MP.
Yeah, he is talking of running.
What, sorry?
I'm nearly sure I heard somewhere on the news that he was talking about running for Labour.
Yeah, I think he'll be parachuted into probably a place. I imagine it's going to be somewhere in Manchester. I don't know, but I can see him running as a Labour candidate. I think it will happen.
Just the hideous herd. That question burned. I thought that was hilarious. They're virtue signaling on their grandstanding. It would just annoy you. He's sitting there in a country whereby I can't remember how many was it, Bonnie?
What's that?
300 people. 300 people died building them stadiums. Their families were never compensated or anything like that there. He's being paid. What was he paid by to come across and be a pundit?
Well, the thing about what you were saying there is right, and I think it's probably more than that. There's a high estimation, there's low estimations, because the stadiums I think took like 10 years to build, 12 years, and they're saying upwards to thousands of people have died, whether that's through accidents or they just died because they've lived there. But there has been cases where people have died in accidents and they get a pittance. It's absolutely disgusting how they've been treated. And people have known about this. It's not just new news. They've known about this from years ago. And this is one of the reasons I didn't necessarily say I took a stance, because football doesn't bother me as such. I've not watched any of the football. Same today, I didn't watch any of it. But the thing, if they're that bothered, if like you said, your Linekers of the world and you like this gentleman Neville and other people are that bothered about LGBT rights and all that, why don't you just don't go over? It's as simple as that. Nobody's forcing you to go over. Literally putting a gun at you and go. Just don't go. It's much the same as the football teams. If you're that woke and you want to take a stance against something like taking the knee, which we talked about this last week. It's really hideous when you saw England take the knee, especially when they played America. I thought it's one of the most funniest things I've seen. That the photograph of that. Mm-hmm. And if obviously that much, just don't go. Take a stance. The world, the international side should have said no. It shouldn't have been held in Qatar. The main reason, like I said, it shouldn't have been held in Qatar. It was just purely corruption. Yes. But then the virtue signal about it at the time, but they didn't say all about it years and years ago. Yeah, they were a bit upset about it because it was even David Beckham said it was wrong. But this is what he's another guy I can't deal with. And Beckham's an ambassador for Qatar, and you know what I mean. You just hope for money with these people. And when we talk about money to send them, sometimes we're happy if we get a decent living wage. We're happy if we can put a little bit of money in the bank and save a little bit of money, for his kids, etc. We're happy with that. But these people have got such an insatiable desire for money. We'll never experience that. We'll never have that kind of money. But they've got 100 million. They'll want 200 million. Next, they'll want 225 million. It's sickening. Like the Tony Blair, I did that video about Blair, and we were talking about Tony Blair briefly recently. The amount of money and wealth that man's generating is absolutely, truly abhorrent. It's disgusting. He's made that money on profiteering off people's deaths, end of the day, because of the illegal war, etc. But same with these people. They just make me. They just make me sick. They really make me sick. And it's like I said, "Boy, put your hand in your pocket" and stuff like that. But they're just, I don't know, greed of these people, and that's what it's just pure greed. And like I said, anybody who's got out about them and got a pair of balls. Gary Neville said, "Look, footlet." I'm not going to the World Cup. I'm not going to commentate. I'm going to make a stance because it's wrong. You can get lost. If they'd have been that bothered, but they're not bothered because they know they're getting a whack. They'll be getting a bonus for going over, not seeing his family for a month or something. So he'll probably get about, I don't know, £50,000 bonus off ITV and stuff like that. Plus there'll be loads of endorsements they'll be doing at the same time. They're all hypocrites. If you read, there's been a lot of stuff said about them. The virtue signal, but then at the same time, they're getting backhanders. They've been working for Qatari TV. Gary Lineker were working for Qatari TV a couple of years back. He got paid something like 1.2 million for working for them. But then at the same time, years later, he's out saying he's condemning them. It just, like I said, I think most people see it for what it is. It's quite sickening. Like I said, it's just hypocrisy. And it's like when we've been doing them sort of deplorable videos, it just highlights what they are. They are truly deplorable.
How about the deplorables last night? You and Sansom were sort of like, what? I thought he was going to win. He won by a landslide.
Well, I thought Sadiq Khan would win it, to be honest with you. I just did. I think I was surprised that the man won it, Klaus Schwab. He's through to the semi-finals. But Gary Lineker got knocked out.
Pure evil.
Well, yeah, I think I spoke about this yesterday to Sansom. It's something I'm going to look into a little bit more. And I did talk about this in the past, about the World Economic Forum, try and get a little bit of knowledge about these particular individuals, because I think making them little videos, because I did a little bit of research with the headlines and you read a little bit into the particular article, a lot of things did come together. I was amazed, and this is my ignorance, of the reach and the power the World Economic Forum has. It just amazed me. And to see it popping up, all these different G7 events and stuff like that, and the power it wields, it's quite unnerving, to be honest. So it's something I'm going to, 2023, going to go on my own little journey with that and see where it takes me.
The photographs came out of Davos, and it was his golden boys. It was Justin Trudeau, from Canada, Justine Ardern from New Zealand, she could fucking eat an apple through a tennis racket. These type of people. Now, they're all world leaders, they're all prime ministers, and they're all politicians and stuff. Well, how come Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates gets an invite? They're not world leaders. But they're part of the system, if you get me. Well, they're the main players in the system. He bragged about how many politicians and how many governments he had infiltrated in the last. He started up the WEF the same year I was born, 1971. So they're 51 years old now. He just put himself into a place of power. Let's not go back into his history of his family, who were Austrian, who moved to Germany, and his father became a certain type of officer. But nobody looks into this. But there are people like ourselves and all that do research this and do look for the facts. Right, I'm going to nip to the toilet. I'm going to play one video for you that'll get me enough time to get to the toilet and back. This is the Irish Git, and I implore you, Bonnie, if you get a chance to follow him, he's on Twitter, he's on Telegram, and he calls it like he sees it on reports and stuff. So I'm going to play it for you now, and then I'll just jump out and come straight back.
Yesterday, the NGOs in Ireland, on behalf of the establishment, gave us this: public rally, united against racism. It's a housing crisis, not a refugee crisis. And as I said on Twitter yesterday morning, it certainly is not a refugee crisis, as most are not refugees. Most are males from safe countries like Georgia, Romania, Morocco, Tunisia, Nigeria, etc. And are flying from places like London and mainland Europe and destroying their documents en route. That is very concerning. And it is just that, concerning. Very concerning. So how did this rally go?
He walked past the bodies of people inside. He was struggling to get across the Mediterranean. The desperate journeys of people who have already got here. And we need to stand up and show that we are a country, we are a people of love and compassion. We're a people who are serious about injustice. And we will speak out and act against those who would seek to divide us in this regard. Well done to the organisers here, and keep on standing up with compassion and justice and love.
Well, for something that was so heavily promoted by all the usual establishment minions and useful idiots, there was more life in the morgues around the country last night than there was at this pro-establishment rally. Not that they'll ever admit it or anything like that. A fitting answer to the fascists and haters of the far right. They speak for no one. Lovely positive atmosphere at the anti-racism rally. It's not good enough anymore just not to be racist. We must be anti-racist. Those fleeing and need our protection deserve to be given it. Well, it looks like public opinion is changing, and they're seeing through the dog whistles of far right, racist, isms and phobias. Go to the likes of Hazel Chew's post and read the comments. Or the comment sections on any of the mainstream media outlets around the country. The public's opinion is a lot different than what we're being led to believe. And the useless, useful idiots know that too. That's why there's no debate allowed.
And that's why they're bringing in hate speech laws into Ireland in March of next year.
Yeah, I saw that on the news. It was an Irish news thing. I saw that we're talking about that. Yeah, I follow that guy. I follow Derek Blind. Is it Derek, the other Irish guy? I follow him on Telegram. And there's a few Irish nationalist channels I follow on Twitter as well. There's one called Irish Conservative, Irish Girl and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, irrespective of your opinion about Ireland, whether you're from Ireland or not. It's just interesting to see what's going on there, because I think for me, I'll be honest with you now, I didn't know the scale of what was going on there until I actually followed those particular people. I really didn't. Yeah. All I knew was what you saw in the mainstream news, and the mainstream news wasn't telling you half of the story what was going on. It wasn't even telling you about a tenth of what was going on. So for me, this sort of last 18 months, especially this year, it's been a real revelation in respect to what's happening in the Republic of Ireland.
Well, apparently, now, it was GT, Gran Torino. He got kicked off YouTube way back because he spoke out. And he was saying there was 147 registered NGOs in Ireland getting money from the government, and another certain little tiny man, like he looks like a wrinkly ball bag. And his second name rhymes with Horace, you know. He was funding them. Yes, Gemma O'Doherty. Gemma O'Doherty. But there's more. What do you call the guy? Computing Forever. You ever watch him?
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff in the past, yeah.
Dave Cullen. Now, Dave Cullen only does film reviews, and he reviews Star Trek and stuff like that there on YouTube. But he has other channels on other platforms where he actually talks about what he used to talk about before YouTube got him on the radar, you know. He was doing great stuff. But then again, as soon as you put your head above the parapet, Bonnie, you know yourself, you become public enemy number one. You're a target. Anything you say, anything I say, they're watching for you to slip up. And that's why the likes of the Angry Bootneck, he speaks in code. When we're speaking on certain channels, we all speak in code. We don't call out certain things. The people that pray at the church with the big golden bell end, the followers of Alan's snack bar, it's all code. So they can't freaking get you on it because I haven't said anything offensive.
Yeah, I'll just say something there if you don't mind, Ragnar. Anybody in chat or anybody's not particular versed about what's happening in the Republic, please get on board with it, because it really is. It's just worth following what's going on and supporting any way you can some of those guys, what they're doing, because there's some, like they said, English Bulldog said about Yorkshire Roses. There's a lot of good Irish people out there doing the same, putting their names out there and doing good stuff, irrespective of your feelings about Ireland. I've got going back on my dad's side of the family, they're Irish. They come from Sligo. Yeah. So I've got a lot of a mixed blood, me. But no, it's just, it's like you said, we just think it's happening on his own doorstep, but it's happening all over, you know what I mean? And we've seen recent events with the Moroccans, for example, rioting every time they've had a football match, some really unsavoury scenes from there. I'll just quickly say so much as well, Ragnar, is that we saw the rioting in various cities in France this week, and the BBC, and I posted us on Telegram, and that's because I read the article, I do read the article, and they actually said in the BBC, it was instigated, some of the problems, by right-wing extremists, French right-wing extremists. Absolute, utter bollocks. Yeah. That just, if that ain't enough to tell you how the mainstream, I've never got how the BBC works, you know what I mean? They just went on board saying it showed loads of beautiful Moroccans celebrating winning World Cup, and it said a lot of things, there were a few fireworks and stuff like that. And it's just Google it yourself. I'm not making up what I'm saying. I pointed out on my Telegram page, it's what they actually said, and it's much the same as what you're saying there, Ragnar, about the news, what you were just commenting there about some of the people. The same issues are exactly happening in Northern Ireland, probably to a lesser degree, obviously, but definitely in England.
But where Northern Ireland benefits is we are about culturally and sort of things like that there, about 30 or 40 years behind Britain. And that's a good thing, believe you me, because in 2015, the British government thought they would do a case study of the transgender education in primary schools, and they tried it up here in the north, in the town I was born. It lasted about 4 days before a lot of very angry parents went in and says, if you teach my kid this, I'm coming back in here and I'm going to rip your head off. It stopped completely. Then it was brought into law, was it? Maybe somebody in the chat will know. I think it was 2 years ago. It was brought into the British curriculum for education. So it has to be taught, in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. But as a parent, you still have the right to take your child out of that lesson. Who wants to teach 5-year-olds about transgenderism? Like, what person would do that? You have to be some sort of sick bastard to try and teach kids like that. Now they're talking about who done the thing on it the other day. Can't mind what he said about it. It was a teacher, and he pulled her apart, and it was in America. And in America in the schools, there'll be a Star Spangled Banner at the front of the classroom, at the back of the classroom, and the flag can't hit the ground, and that's what they were taught from Civil War, probably. The flag can't touch the ground. She threw the flag on the ground and started putting up LGBT flags.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
And it just angers you. People are covering it, but not everybody's listening. It's like the mass immigration into Britain. It was the wee sleepy village, and there was like, what was it, 700 people in the village. And they had a pub and a church and a shop and a row of houses. This village was just a row of houses, but it had an RAF base outside it. And they wanted to put in 3,000 refugees into it. Now, if it hadn't have been for the fact that it was an RAF base half a mile outside their little village, they wouldn't have given a pick, because it wasn't in their backyard. Because they're all saying, but marbly mad liberals, it's lovely, and refugees, but not in their backyard. As long as it's in your backyard and my backyard, they don't care. And a lot of people now in England are waking up to this, and I'm not too sure if you feel the same, but what's Strictly Bacon saying? Irish Rose, she was doing videos before the lockdown. She didn't do so many during the lockdown. She's coming back again about other ethnicities running about housing estates, knocking the crap out of white kids until the whites had enough. And even the wee grannies were out with, hatchet handles and stuff, and hurley sticks and whatever, and putting them right. I think the video that floated about there a year ago about the new Irish guy that had stole a phone off a teenager, and the teenager just went and got a load of his mates, caught the guy, and he brought a few of his friends, and the wee Irish guys knocked the crap out of him. They're now apparently riding around on bicycles in around the city of Dublin, going after them. Every time they stick their head up, there's the white Irish people. So maybe they should do that in London or England. I don't think you could do it in London. There's not that many white people left there. That's mad. Right. Your thoughts, son?
Yeah. I saw the video you mentioned there, and like I said, it's happening. I suppose for a lot of people to see what's happening now, because it's, like I said, you are seeing a bit of a fight back, but not in a sense. Maybe I don't want to sound physicality. I mean, yes. There's also people out there protesting about what's happening, because it has happened in this country, but to a less degree, and it's quite sad, and it's annoying as well to see when they do dump, because that's what they do. They literally dump asylum seekers anywhere they want to do, and they're not really informing anybody, giving people 24-hour notice, 48 hours notice to community, and that's it. They're getting dumped in a particular hotel or some place to stay. But like when it's actually going to somewhere, it's like you could say a middle class area. It's a big news story, as we've seen on a couple of cases now in England. And all the locals are coming out. The local politician, obviously Conservatives, coming out. He's not happy about it. But like you said, it's very double standard. But we're actually seeing whether they're actually putting some of these asylum seekers into Conservative areas, which we've seen recently on the TV a lot. A lot of people locals are getting really, really annoyed about it. But it's going to, like I said, I think they're running out of places where they can put these people. And I think they're at desperate levels now. We're on about putting them in holiday camps, former army barracks again. They're on about reopening some more, or ones what are in sort of semi-repairing sort of thing. Then there's another place where they're on about putting them in halls of residence what are not being used and stuff like that. So obviously the planning ahead as well, because they know themselves, I can't speak for about England, UK as such, is that they know there's going to be more and more of these people coming over. They're not. By the sounds of it, to me, it's almost saying, well, we know that they're going to come over because we're not going to do anything about it. So, it's going to continue. And I do think some of these asylum seekers will be put into areas where the locals will fight back, and it will be what you consider a conservative Tory middle class area, but they'll have no choice. I do think that eventually will happen, but the Tory party knows once they start doing that, they're going to, it's all to do with politics. Then they could, people won't vote for them, sort of thing. But it's unsettling times to see, because obviously now with the Christmas period we're all going for Christmas period now. That sort of news, maybe not as important as it might have been a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. This is the impression I get, to be honest with you, Ragnar, a lot to what's going on with asylum seekers in the country also in recent times, is it's not people's number one priority, because this cost of living, another crisis has taken that priority now. And people more worried about the gas bills, the electric bills, and other things, rather than what's happening at the borders. And that's the truth. And that's my own opinion. And when I say that, don't get transfixed on Telegram, for God's sake, because it's an echo chamber. But
it is.
About off social media, when you talk to people at the shops, people you work with and stuff like that, 9 times out of 10, something will always pop up about the cost of living. And that's what most people are concerned about. Sadly, rightly or wrongly, depending on your own viewpoint. So I'm not trying to knock people who saying who are still posting stuff, because I still reference it and post about it sometimes. Maybe not as much as I do, because there's a lot of other good people doing it. But again, for normies, I just think it's not the number one thing. I really do at the moment. Whether that's planned, it's all part of this big plan. What's going on, because it's one crisis after another sort of thing. These people coming over and more people legally coming over. But I just think at the moment, the Christmas period, and I think in January it's just going to be the same. They'll still be coming over, the same sabre rattling by the Conservatives, the same, what I call it, fake outrage by some people as well, like your Farages and stuff like that. But I just don't see it changing. I just really don't see anything changing, not for the foreseeable future when it comes to legal and illegal immigration to this country, irrespective of the Conservative Labour.
Steve's asking about the cruise ships. Now, I don't know if you heard about that, Donnie, but that was months ago. They talked about putting them on 5-star cruise ships.
Well, they're doing it in Glasgow, aren't they? Is it in the Clyde? There's the 2 ships they've got there with the Ukrainian refugees on.
Yes.
But that might happen, like you said, and they've got to come to. There's got this, used to use that expression, the tipping point. Well, I think we went past the tipping point years ago, to be honest with you, when it comes to what's going on. And you got to ask yourself, where they're going to do next. Well, I personally think this is my own opinion. I think they'll start fast tracking asylum seekers, and what I mean by that is there's a backlog at the moment. It's a phenomenal amount of I don't know. I'll say a number, 70,000 are in the actual system at the moment. I think they'll rattle through them. I really do. And I also believe in 2023, a lot of asylum seekers will be given the right to work, because that's under review at the moment. Again, it's being pushed through. I think that will happen. That'll be another source of labour, cheap labour in the market. Then you'll see companies, which I've talked about this before, you'll get companies coming out there deliberately taking these asylum seekers because they'll get some off the government for doing it, and also it'll give them a bit of publicity and stuff like that. That will happen. You will be seeing asylum seekers being deliberately picked to work in certain industries, because I think they will be given the right to work. Not them all, but I do believe there will be a set amount be given the right to work, because again, they then will be released from the hotels, this fixed accommodation, but they can move somewhere else to live, take that burden away from the hotel, because they then will be replaced by more people who are coming to the country. So bit by bit, the Conservatives will, so in my opinion, this is giving the green light to illegal immigration, whatever you want to call them, economic migrants, asylum seekers, because I think they will give them the right to work at a level. Might be 10,000 in the first 6 months, but there might be 10,000 might come through illegally 6 months just to replace them, because there doesn't seem to be a plan. I don't see anything from the Conservatives for 2023, what they're going to do about the illegal immigration. It's just sabre rattling. They're having all these meetings and reviews. Just think about this. I don't want to swear now. They had a recent thing about the Manchester bombings, yeah? How long ago was it, the Manchester bombing? Just think about that. How many years ago was it? And they just recently finished it now, the thing about it. So that's where we're at. So you can watch these things about the Conservative MPs looking, look, this is really bad, what's going on. They don't give a damn. They don't really, if they were that bothered, he'd go as an independent. It's a lot. I'm going to leave the Conservative Party because I've had enough, because you're not doing anything to tackle this. I've got my constituents every day coming to my constituency, my meeting, my room or whatever it is, complaining about what's going on in their particular town, their location. I'm just sick to death. Why aren't we doing something about it? They won't do anything like that. They'll just do it on a bit of thing. Oh yeah, it's bad what's happening. Then it'll be the next thing. Let's have another meeting about it 2 months later. Yeah, that was bad, wasn't it? We've had 40,000 over for at least 6 months. Let's have a talk about that. Then what's going to happen? I really don't think anything is going to happen. And it doesn't matter. There's so much going on. The the bad stories about things what people talk about, I don't know. It gets me. It upsets me, to be honest. It gets me quite angry because it's like it's apathy, not from ourselves, for people like Bulldog and people like that who try their best, but it's apathy from like the people, the populace, politicians, and the impression is it's just not important to them. It's going to continuation, and in some ways, if you look at the bigger picture, which I think you might have alluded to earlier on, it's another form of getting more people into the work, into the workplace. That's why I look at it as well.
Yeah.
I just think
undercut you again.
Conservatives are making out, they're pushing back against it, but I think slyly they're just going to say, "Well, we'll tell everybody it's not our fault. We've got to get these asylum seekers into work, or you're getting turkeys this Christmas," and it'll be stuff like that. It's going to happen.
RMF says he's just sent me a WhatsApp there. He says they're doing the same here in Amsterdam. Cruise ships full of migrants in the ports here. They're actually in the ports, just being fed and pampered on cruise ships.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's ridiculous, and people might say it's cheap tactics to use, but when you see homeless people, and we all talk about this, and we talk about people in poverty, which we were talking a bit about last night on the last night stream I did with Sensum, but then people might not agree with me here, but I think when you compare to what's happening to his own people, vulnerable people, it's only right that we highlight what's going on when we're seeing people going in 4-star hotels, paying. There was a story there. It was only a couple of weeks ago. A guy who was staying in £100 a night hotel, and he was complaining about the food. And it's a true story. I'm not making this up. And you see that, and you see people who, like yourselves, even are struggling. We're deciding whether to put the gas and electric on, and we're working. We've worked as like we've paid it into the system. You just think, what the, beep, what's going on? And it's like I said, like people often use this phrase, they're really haters, and that's what it's something I'm going to sort of think maybe work with next year, because I think that's the thing I'm going to start using, because that's what it is. They really do hate us, and and it's like predominantly working class people who seem to be bearing the brunt of what's going on economically and demographically, and we're bearing the brunt of it. And it doesn't. We haven't got a voice. Do you know what I mean? We can talk among ourselves. We can talk on live streams. We can talk among us friends, as family, etc. But we haven't got anybody out there who's got this sort of status to give us that voice. We thought we had, in some respects. You might talk about Farage and other people, but we haven't got a voice. And the traditional voice has gone. It went a long time ago, which would have been, if the old left, the Labour Party, if you want to talk in those terms. But there's nobody there. I don't know about in Northern Ireland, but I know, like I said, in England, in the respect of the Labour Party, and obviously a little bit different maybe in Scotland.
We still have them blood and thunder loyalist politicians for God and Ulster people. You don't have that in England or Wales or Scotland for that matter. And these men believe in a tradition of Ulster unionism, and we're not giving that up anytime soon. I don't know if Britain had the same. If England had the same, would they think more like us? They're not like hard right on it. They're just right. This is our land. This is our people. Fuck off. I think more English people should be doing that. There's people out there marching. There's Reverend Simon Sideways and all, and they're going to marches, and there's 20,000 ex-veterans. Well, I looked up the numbers on that there, and there's 1.9 million recorded British people living on the streets, native British people, and between 4 and 6% are British veterans. So somebody can do the maths there. 4 and 6%, between 4 and 6% of 1.9 million people is a fair number of veterans sleeping in doorways. Right. What am I going to play now? I'm just going to play one more on it, and then I'll close it up for the night.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. Yeah.
And thought you might take this one.
From Afghanistan or the Middle East want to stay in Europe. Shouldn't they be allowed to?
Limited number, okay. But whole Europe eventually become Muslim country, impossible. Or African country, also impossible.
There's nothing wrong with that, is there? I mean, you're a refugee yourself.
They themselves, I think, better to their own land, climatically. Much better. Europe too cold.
My parents moved from India to the UK. That's now their home. That's okay too, isn't it? If Indians or anyone else wants to live in Europe?
I think England, the small island, 90% become Indian. Then I don't know.
Your Holiness, a lot.
Yeah, I remember that video. It's there's another video you could marry that up with, and that's the I don't know if it still is. It was the Hungarian foreign minister when he had that interview, and he was on about he wants to protect the Hungarian people, etc., saying that he doesn't believe in diversity, and much the same as that reporter then went on a complete meltdown because they just can't accept it that other nations' people.
Oh, are you talking about Mr. Zero?
Yeah.
No, Zero.
Yeah, no, but it's right what he says. You know what I mean? And you know, he's a Buddhist man, and like I said, there's forms of immigration into irrespective countries what are acceptable. Because you know, you can't be too ignorant about this, and so it can be a purely 100% white society, indigenous society. I just don't believe that myself. But it's got to be controlled, and the problem is it's just uncontrolled now, and it has been for too long. And I just think there's no going back on it. That's my own opinion. But like I said, what I think he alludes to the fact is, you know, you still got to have the parent culture identity. You still got to be the dominant force in that particular country. Or otherwise, you know, that country's lost its self-being, its self-worth. That's my opinion about that. I think, and the sovereign state thing, the thing I'm seeing a lot is that a lot of people, whether you want to call them internationalists, I don't know the expression, the probably good expression is they don't want to see sovereign states. And that's the impression I get about the UK. At the moment, because I do believe this isn't a conservative party as such. I don't think the politicians have got the will of the people, but I do believe the internationalists want to see the breakdown of sovereign states, to see the people be diluted. So there is just no fight back at all to what's continually happening, especially in Western Europe.
Yes. So I'm just sticking your links in the chat here. So, right. We'll close off with, I don't know, shall we close off with another Bonnie Lad one? That was Raymond had done the figures there. It's 21,739 British veterans sleeping on the streets. If they go by the actual figures. So, in my mind, Bonnie, that is a fucking disgrace. You know, not to mention the fact there's 1.9 million British people sleeping on the streets, where they're housing the followers out in snack bar. But anyway, right, folks, I'd like to put one in the chat for our guest, Bonnie. He's been brilliant. Brilliant chat, really loved it. I want to get him back on again when he can. I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I did say Merry Christmas. And good night and God bless. Where are we at here?